Okay, let's call this to order meeting of the West Newbury Board of Selectmen. It's 7:03. This meeting is being broadcast on local cable TV and recorded for rebroadcast on the local cable channels and on the internet. The meeting is also accessible by remote participation through Zoom. Some announcements: the new Sage Center is having an open house this Thursday from June 30th from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. Come see what the new programs that have been introduced this year. Certainly a lot of good stuff going on. Also after that, you can walk across the parking lot and go to the concert at the bandstand. There will be Thursday evenings at 6:30 p.m. So how will the people be able to watch them online? Does anyone know? Or I didn't know that.
It's just the list of performers that are online.
Oh, just
Yeah,
the list of
yeah, no, the performances
okay,
are not
okay,
online. No.
Okay. As usual, the town is looking, especially at this time of year, for new people on boards and commissions and committees, especially the new Affordable Housing Trust. This will be a very interesting position. You'll be able to be creative, maybe contribute valuable to contribute your expertise in a very meaningful way if you volunteer for that, especially for that particular new committee.
And Archie, if I could,
Yes.
I'm going to invite Jim just to give a little summary because that is going to be on the July 11th meeting.
Okay.
So he has reached out. Well, you've reached out to those who've expressed interest.
Yeah, so everyone who had previously expressed interest for the bylaw committee, I reached out to, either myself or Rebecca has reached out to, regarding if they were interested in going for the actual trust. And then anyone, I think 2 other applicants had come in and on top of those as well. So I think we'll have quite a
So we wanted to wait till we had a full slate of potential to put it on. So that'll be up for the July 11th.
Okay,
Great.
great. As usual, to get town announcements, www.newbury.org/subscribe. We have a wonderful first item of business here. The town has been certified as a Tree City USA, and Fred will give us the particulars.
Thank you. Actually, Jim, I got a knee and a brace here, so he's gonna hand you this. This is the plaque they gave us, which I think would go somewhere in West Newbury, town hall here or town offices. And this is a very large flag, saying Tree City USA that can be flown in places. And the third thing that we have announcing this is the 2 signs that will be posted. Wayne and I are working on where they'll be posted. You really gonna open it up? All right.
Oh, we gotta see it.
Okay, all right.
It's a big flag.
Yeah, it's a big flag. Here, I can,
Well,
Yeah, we should let Fred hold.
yeah, I'll get up. It is a,
Don't trip on that, Fred.
yeah, it is a, it's not a trivial thing. But yeah, it's a big
Wow.
flag.
Nice.
So I went down and got, there was a presentation by the state to all the towns that were participating in the program. Thanks, Rick. And just to give you a few really quick facts and figures, there are 86 towns in Massachusetts that are tree cities or towns.
Out of how
That's
many?
out of 351 towns or cities. So, and we were the only ones that were the newbies this year. So we got sort of a special
Well, that's
recognition
cool.
as being year 1. Yeah, it was really very nice. And gives us, a nice reputation with DCR, among other things. I thought I would just mention three other quick items, just to bring you up. We have there's the sign. Wayne, is that where it's gonna be posted permanently right there? Okay.
Yeah, Wayne, if you talk, and the camera will point at you, and we'll see the sign.
Yeah, say something loud, Wayne.
Hello, owl.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. So the tree trail, we have identified 26 trees in and around the Mill Pond area. And that's gonna be open sometime this summer. We'll have the signs put up on the trees. The Mill Pond Committee has been nice enough to approve the signs. Tree planting is on the schedule for the next year or so. Maybe some replacements here at the town office building. And Wayne and I are working on getting a grant for, I'm gonna just guess, 20 trees at the two playgrounds, the Action Cove and the Page School, to provide some shade. And I'm contacting some folks about watering, and that will all be wrapped into the grant. So we've got some good ideas for the next year. And we will.
What types of trees? You know,
Well, they'll be native, that's for sure. And, you normally think of oaks or maples, but I think we'd want a variety that would be of interest to people who like trees or could have an educational kind of aspect to them. But nothing yet. This is all just in the very early planning stages. So we appreciate your support for the tree committee. We appreciate all, you're working with us to get the application and on the tree sitting, and Angus as well, and Jim. So we're sort of very proud of that. And I think we are recognized as sort of a very active community in that regard.
Well, and want to thank you for your efforts and your enthusiasm, Fred.
Well, we
You're
are.
kind of driven this thing. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Well, we are blessed with, not calculated, 59% tree canopy cover. And we're gonna do everything we can to maintain that, both for aesthetic reasons, but also for wildlife habitat and climate resiliency. And I will say that the planning board has been receptive to my appearance at their meetings and making suggestions here and there. And so I look forward to working with them too, which I think will be another avenue to help West Newbury keep its tree cover. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fred.
Hey, I know there was a question about where to install those signs, and I think they're often at the town boundary. And Wayne, you mentioned that, is there an issue of putting a sign like that on this? Because I've seen them all around.
I don't see an issue.
Yeah, good. So those will be.
Wayne's an expert.
Yeah.
He has many tales from his prior jobs about mounting Tree City signs. So he knows the ins and outs.
Right.
You just nailed to a tree, right?
Good one.
You sure you don't want to strike that remark from the record? Thanks, sir.
It was supposed to be a little humor.
With non-carpet nails. Right.
Yes.
Our next item is the discussion of the town representation on the Eastern Essex Veterans Board. Is Karen gonna be?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I didn't see you. Hi.
Hi, how is everyone?
Good.
How you doing?
Should I have a seat?
Thanks.
So, Karen, we have had some feedback from our representative, Bob Janes, that some of the other towns, that the people on representing the towns were members of their boards of selectmen. So can you just give us a little bit of, not history, but how you think it works and what's better for what kind of a person on the board is better for the town? I guess that's the question.
Sure. Okay, so the district is, there's 6 towns, and according to the bylaws, that each town has an equal vote, has equal representation, which is one select person or designee. So it can be, you know, the town manager or the select board or a designee, which means that you can pick anyone that you guys deem appropriate. The big charge for the board is approving the budget. So that's what you guys need to, you know, take a look at. That's like, you know, obviously the most important piece on that. And so most of
Oh, the budget as a whole for the district, you mean?
that's correct, and
Okay.
everything, and so then, you know, obviously based on the budget would be your, you know, would be the town's assessment. And so that's a big piece of it. We meet quarterly around budget season. We might need, you know, extra time or two, but we are set up with quarterly meetings. So on the board right now with the 6 people, so minus Bob, so 4 of them are veterans, and one's a Blue Star mother, which means that she has her son is a career Air Force person. And so a lot of times the towns would like to have a veteran on the board as their representative.
So you said currently 4 are veterans, 4 of the other, there's 6 communities total.
Yep.
Right, and so 4 out of the 6 are veterans, and how many of those are on the select board as opposed to appointed or, you know, town manager?
Sure, 3, so, okay. So there's Bob Snow, who's Marine. We just had somebody new from Newbury who's a veteran. The Georgetown is a veteran, the Blue Star mom, and Bob was a veteran. So the Blue Star mom is on the select board. So those ones are all on the select board.
So you said you meet quarterly and then around budgets, are you on a, you know, July 1st, June 30th fiscal year? Like communities, yeah. Okay.
Yep. And the other thing too is that during those meetings, we do discuss, and I like to interact with the representatives from each of the towns to talk about, you know, how best to serve the veterans within their communities. And so a lot of times that's why you want that veteran connection, because not only is it with the administration of the town, but it's with the resident veterans. And so it's a great kind of partnership between, you know, our office and, you know, the touch point in the community. And so a lot of times with having a veteran, we like to talk to each other a lot. You have that, you know, special camaraderie and understanding. And so that's why a lot of towns do pick a veteran to be on the board.
So none of the current board here are veterans.
But we have had non-veterans in the past.
Yeah.
So it's really a decision that, you know, you would have to make what's best for your town or what your thoughts are. So it's kind of run the gamut. So it's really.
So
Angus, do you remember what Bob's thoughts were? What was he thinking?
yeah, I think he felt that the, you know, where the board is representing, you know, the town has a designee of the board, and in the absence of a designee, it is the chair under the bylaws that you sent. And I think he felt that with his term coming up at the end of the fiscal year, that he felt the town, you know, the board should have a direct connection with the activities of the Eastern Essex. So I think with his term ending, my read of your bylaws is that as chair, you would become the designee. So I think the question of the board is, do you want to put out a call for other veterans to see if there's another veteran who could be appointed to fill that seat? But in the meantime, I think you would hold the seat by default.
Okay, that would kind of be I think it would be worthwhile to see if we put out a request for someone, for a veteran. I think it
I think that
would be better. Yeah, what do you think?
I agree. I think the veteran is going to have a much better understanding of veterans affairs, veteran related issues, and it just seems more appropriate to me if there is somebody who will step forward.
Leading up to the Memorial Day parade, we had sent letters to every veteran in town. The town clerk's office has a database, so obviously we can put things on the agenda and do news and announcements and so forth. But if you wanted to go that extra mile and write a letter, it would not be any trouble to do a mailing to every veteran in town and to make them aware of the activities. I think the letter that Karen wrote that was in your packet is really nice, intended to bring more attention to the work that you do. So you could write a letter like that. This is to help inform people of this resource and also see if there's someone who wants to volunteer.
I mean, it might be doubly effective in that they're going to be, even if they don't want to be the representative, but they get information on the resource at the same time. Yeah.
And when you asked the question, the town of Essex, so their board member is not on the select board, but he's a Army National Guard. And, but he held another position on another board. He was like on the finance committee. So sometimes there is that connection too, that you have somebody who has, been on different boards and committees in different capacities within the town. But it's certainly, I think that also residents of the town and veterans, they do like to know that they have a veteran representing them. So that's, because again, when it comes to the budget and stuff, I mean, they're gonna run the budget by you anyway, so,
I think one of the concerns, or one of the reasons Bob suggested a select board member, was that he felt that the board was not aware enough about veterans issues. So perhaps if we find somebody to appoint, we could just make it a customary, come before us after your meeting, just give us an update of what happened. If it's once a quarter.
That's a great idea.
Yeah,
Or even twice a year.
yeah, just something so that we would be aware of.
So, in a sort of a synopsis, I guess. It's not, I don't know what services, the Essex, organization, Essex Veterans Organization actually provides to local veterans. So, sorry for my ignorance there, but I just.
yeah. No, so I'm always happy to talk about what my office does. A brief background and whatnot is, so in Massachusetts, in every city and town, there's a veteran service officer, a VSO like myself. I'm an Army veteran. And so there is a benefit, it's called Chapter 115 for low income veterans and surviving spouses. And it's a local benefit that if they qualify and they are on this program, the town pays 100% of the benefit, and then the state reimburses the town at 75%. The other thing that I do, which is, is VA claims. I'm like a liaison for the community and the VA, because trying to navigate the VA on your own is just, I don't know how any lay person would do it. I do this every day, all day. And so I help with like service-connected disability claims. If somebody had like an injury or illness because of what happened while they were in service, Also, there's benefits for surviving spouses. There's annuities, you know, aid in attendance, those types of things. And so our office is there to support our veterans and their families, seek out and obtain benefits that are available to them, because there's a lot of benefits out there that people don't know about. And so that's why I sent out the letter, you know, doing outreach to, you know, I want to scream from the rooftop, like, I'm here to help you. I have all this information and knowledge, like I want to be able to, you know, disseminate and to help people. Yep.
Great, thanks.
Yeah,
Thank you for coming in. and giving us
Thank you,
the
Karen,
background on
that's
it.
great.
yeah, absolutely. And the other thing too, and then I'll leave, but if you guys ever have any questions or if you feel like there's a disconnect between the office and the board or any other, you know, I mean, I talk with Angus sometimes and stuff. Just call me. I'm always happy to come out. I'm always happy to, you know, have those conversations or ask those questions or, you know, I'm always more than happy to do that. So communicate with me.
Great,
Thank
great.
you.
Thanks.
All right, thanks.
Thanks so much, Karen.
All right,
Bye-bye.
thank you.
So I would say we draft a little letter and
Yep.
send it out to the same mailing list.
So effective July 1, you will be in that role until someone else is appointed, and then we'll draft up a letter, work with you to finalize it and get that sent out to every veteran in town, and hopefully there will be someone else on a near-term agenda who's interested in serving.
It'd be interesting to actually, I mean, I would see actually occasionally attending the meetings just because it's not an area I'm familiar with, you know, it's not a set of concerns I'm familiar with, and it would be, you know, best way to learn would be to attend.
Karen, when is the next meeting?
So our next meeting is gonna be, we just had our November and our June meeting, so it'll probably be September.
Oh, okay, so we have some time.
Yes, absolutely. And I can make sure that you guys, you know, I always contact the clerk's office to
Okay.
post the meeting. So they, you know, follow the open meeting law. And so anytime, it's an open meeting, so anybody can come whenever, you know, whenever the meeting is. We do tape it and have it, you know, available, you know, via Zoom and things like that. So, yeah.
And
encourage-
those meetings are in Essex, or where are they?
So Ipswich Town Hall.
Oh, Ipswich Town Hall, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I guess the town clerk would receive notification then.
Yeah, and they're all posted in the foyer and on the
Yeah.
town website.
Yep.
So,
And
Could,
also,
just because I might not think to look at, you know.
I'll send it to the board when it comes
Yeah,
up.
that'd be great, thanks.
yeah, and everything, and you feel free, you know, if you want any previous meeting minutes or anything like that, so.
Okay.
All right,
Great,
okay,
thanks a lot, Karen.
yes, thank you.
Okay,
yep, Liz is on via Zoom. Yeah.
available there? Okay.
So are we skipping over the Purple Heart thing?
Oh, you know what? Yeah, so that's, I'm glad you mentioned that. So
Okay.
I put that in the packet. So Karen's left. Jim had brought that to my attention, or maybe, I don't know, Rebecca might have brought it to your attention, but we think it's a great initiative. We want to, we thought it would be great to get that on a July agenda, and that's kind of how we had it penciled in. And then in my conversation with Karen last week to confirm her attendance tonight, she mentioned that, and I thought she might bring it up. And so if she did, I wanted you to have the background, but where the Purple Heart Day is August 7th, we thought a designation a little bit closer to that date would be better and give us a little more time to do some outreach on that.
Okay,
The only thing that would be required from the board it's actually on page 20 of the packet.
Is the
Is the
proclamation?
proclamation,
Yeah.
so we can change the wording to whatever the board feels.
I think it
is
looks
that's
great.
fine, yeah.
So that was, Rebecca had essentially taken what Haverhill had done. We had spoke with one of the Haverhill city councilors and then the agent who helped put that forward in Haverhill. And so we use that language for the proclamation. So you guys would approve the proclamation, and then we would purchase signs and post them around town.
Okay.
Do you want to approve it now, or should we just wait?
I'd rather have it agended
Okay.
because, yeah, but I just wanted you to have the background in case Karen brought it up.
Okay. all
Yeah,
right.
then we can sort of reinforce it.
Yeah, make a big deal of it.
So our next item is the final concept plan for the Page Pipe Save road crossing.
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi.
You guys got fancy new technology since 2 weeks ago. This is beautiful.
We just have a really busy videographer that doesn't show up, but who's like running around with 4 cameras. No, it's great. It's our owl. It's our new tech, and it's terrific.
I am back just to show you the final concept plan. We took everybody's thoughts and comments into consideration. So if you'd like me to share my screen, I can just show you the final concept that when the town is ready, we can submit for probably Safe Routes to School is probably the first. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So this is the zoomed in concept with the crossing kind of as far towards the school driveway as we can while we maintain some area for equestrian stacking. Crossed the Main Street and blank area that the equestrian folks requested for the horse crossing. The sidewalk will go behind the guardrail that will be replaced in this area, and then new flashing signage, new school signage like we told you before, a new updated flashing warning beacon, and the Safe Routes to School funding at this point, the maximum is $1.5 million. So if we consider a slightly wider sidewalk, almost shared use path I had someone go out and take a look at whether, we might need a retaining wall in order to put that sidewalk in this area. I think we would be able to get down to Mill Pond with that 1.5, just based on the grading and the slopes there. But it would be a nice first step in a future sidewalk plan in the whole entire area. So that's where we are at this point. At the end of the safety analysis, you have a final report submitted to the town that includes everybody who commented and our entire thoughts and how this plan addresses the safety concerns of the town in this area.
Great. Any questions, anybody?
Yeah, so with this expanded sidewalk, Liz, that brings it up to the grant amount, the 1.5 million?
I think it'll be pretty close. I think there's going to be a couple places that need retaining walls in order to get a decent width sidewalk that horses would be comfortable on if they decided to use it. But definitely comfortable for school children and families to use if they wanted to go that way, or if people were coming down from the solar farm. I understand there's a trail through there. So I think it would be a good first step.
I guess it hadn't occurred to me that the sidewalks would be made to accommodate, sidewalks down Main Street would be made to accommodate horses as well. Because, there is a route.
It doesn't have to be. But this is a good stopping point because when you get a little farther to the west, you've got some wetlands that I think will be a little more challenged to cross. There's a culvert crossing there near Mill Pond. So that gets expensive really quickly. So Mill Pond driveway is a really logical place to end. So
I think Wayne's point was that we should ask for pretty close to the upper limit of the grant. And so I just want to make sure that we were here.
I think that with retaining walls might be necessary, at least small ones, and those also get expensive. So this would be, in my estimation, pretty close to 1.5 million.
Great, thanks.
Or how long is that? Ballpark, how long?
It's about 1,200 linear feet.
Okay. So a little bit over $1,000 a foot.
Right. It's not really, the retaining walls are a little more, the sidewalks a little less. So yes,
Right.
maybe about that.
And that's for the whole, obviously, the whole reconfiguration.
Right, okay, yes.
Including-
I guess the sidewalk doesn't account for that much then, yeah. Good point.
Right. So the ensemble of the RRFB and the guardrail and the new sidewalk in the vicinity of the school driveway is probably $350,000, $400,000. It's on its own.
Yeah, okay.
So
where that, when we go beyond the DPW buildings, would that be, is that part under the Mill Pond Greenbelt? Not that it doesn't change much, but would we have to get permission?
So you're
from
talking the
Greenbelt?
one that extends south, that section of the prompt is on, the cursor is on right now?
No, we're just going down, going beyond the going down the hill, yeah. So is that part?
All of the work would be within the roadway right of way.
It's in the
So it
roadway
wouldn't be
right
anything.
away, okay.
right.
And then the other thing we had talked about last meeting, I think, was potentially adding stairs from the parking lot down, and you had said that would be part of the design phase, not part of.
Correct. We'd want to get survey for that to see if we could fit the stairs in.
Okay, so what?
So I would say if the board's happy, maybe you'd vote to accept the report as the final work product for the grant. And, we definitely want to thank the Commonwealth and our delegation for getting the funding earmarked to allow this work to get going. And I think it positions us well to be competitive, to go after some Safe Routes to Schools funding for implementation. But I think if you vote to accept the report, that gives a nice kind of, that we can close it out, because as you know, the earmark, we have to complete it by June 30th. So it's good to just kind of commemorate that it's done.
Okay, I think it looks good. I would move that we accept the report.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Liz, I have thanks so much. I have another question. So if I've kind of wondered which side of the road would the sidewalk make the most sense on as it goes down the hill and then back up the other side, going towards the west. And, I see, it seems like it makes the most sense, based on your analysis, to be on the south side of the road. So although it's, I think, probably out of the scope of this project, where would you envision a road crossing? Because the sidewalk, once you do get farther along and to the existing sidewalk, the sidewalk's on the other side of the street. So where would you envision a street crossing ultimately happening to, to connect with the existing sidewalk.
Right, the existing sidewalk ends. It's like, right, it's like Training Field Road, I think.
Yeah.
So we would probably want to put a crossing. Well, it depends on if we stay on that south side of the road the entire way. You might want to do a crossing at Coffin Street and get to the north side of the road at any location along that area between Coffin and Training Field Road, where it makes sense from a sight distance type thing, approaching sight distance type thing. Did that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does, yeah, I guess the road does straighten out for a bit with minimal rise, so, sort of around where Long Hill is and the power lines, sort of in that area, it's flatter and straighter.
Right. So I think that you'd look to cross it somewhere in there. But again, that's part of a larger project.
Thanks.
Sure. Thank you for your time. And it was great working with your team. So thank you very much.
Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
all your work. Thank you.
All right. Have a good night.
Bye.
Okay, our next item is a proposed CBA application for proposed darker ramp at the River Road Greenbelt property and the River Access Committee. You have the floor.
Thank you. Rob Phillips from River Access Committee. Barry LaCroix is here in person. Lisa Grandma is attending online. And I want to apologize. All three of us were on vacation last week. So when the agenda was being put together, Angus had no one to pass the language by. So I'm going to read something different than what is before you on the
Okay.
The agenda. So the River Access Committee would like your support to file a CPA application for design and permitting services associated with river access in coordination with Essex County Greenbelt, the owner, on parcel R24-5 River Road. And so we're not at a stage where we're proposing a boat ramp or a dock. We need to do a little bit of outreach to stakeholders to find out what we have support for. But in the meantime, we're definitely going to need some design and permitting services to do anything down there. If you can imagine, it's not necessarily going to be that we're going to come in at one fell swoop with a grand plan. I suspect what we're going to do is an iterative process. By reaching out to stakeholders. Stakeholders will be Open Space Committee, Fire and Rescue, River Access is important to them as well. Town residents who see some use out of it, but we're also going to have to take into account the fact that it's a limited site and probably will demand some level of concern about what we load river world level. So in other words, it's going to probably tend to be smaller than larger, but we haven't defined it yet. We just need to get started. Part of the definition is having someone go out and find the iron rods that are in the ground so we can actually know where the boundaries are. We've been asking Greenbelt for some help. We expect some help. They've been busy on other things, particularly in our town, but obviously across the region. But we expect them to be fully supportive. But the agreement we have with them puts most of this on us. So we're gonna, for instance, wanna know where the pins are, so we can figure out where parking might occur. And then there's a question of how much parking, what are we gonna actually allow for load down there? Again, we're not looking to, you know, the trailhead, I think, only has 2 spaces. Maybe 3?
2 or 3.
2 or 3, right.
Yeah.
So we're talking the same thing, I'm sure. But we haven't gotten through the stakeholders enough to know whether that's going to be adequate or satisfying. But we have to keep in mind it's a residential neighborhood first and foremost. So we're looking to see if you would support us making an application to get some funding so we can start taking this up.
I think the Conservation Commission is also an important stakeholder.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't want to run down the entirety of the list.
Yeah,
But when we've gone around before and visited different people, I mentioned fire and rescue because sometimes they might not be remembered, but they're an important element of this because obviously they got to get to the river sometimes too. We've met with the harbor committee and so yeah, there's a lot of stakeholders and more will be found as you start the process.
sure.
And then you'll have interested parties, you know, some butters or neighbors that will be very interested and probably very supportive. And you might have some others who are less supportive. But be that as it may, that will be there.
So, Rob, would this be, the parcel is sort of, I guess, like an H, you might say, so where the existing,
So if you
it
recall,
would be on the more westerly,
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Well, the river turns there and it's hard to know where north and south, east and west are, but yes, it's if you recall, there's 2 parcels that go to the river.
Correct.
One is smaller and that's the Newburyport side, one is larger and that's the Haverhill side, if you will, just for direction. We're talking about the larger parcel. It's also the one that has more upland, or at least it's not marsh, so it's a little firmer in soil. But that's the reason to market, because you know, I'm familiar with that area, I've put in that area, but I can't tell you exactly where the bounds are. And we know that the bounds are marked. They're just marked with iron pins. So we have to go, for instance, as an example, we need someone to go down and flag them and say, yeah, this is the bounds. So that way, anybody who has a question about what we're talking about can drive by and visually look at it. I know when we've gone through this location before, when we were talking about participating with Greenbelt, you know, it makes it a lot easier if you can walk to the water's edge and actually see what it's like there and see why it is a good place to be put in there. It answers a lot of questions. Right now, if you just leave it open, some people imagine it's a good site, some people will be in the wrong site and say, well, that's a horrible place to put that. Oh, it's not where we're going in. We think we're going to go in here.
So typically, when the select board is asked to support an application, it's because we own the property or the town owns the property.
Yeah, we don't in this case.
Right, so.
We have an agreement with the property owner.
Yeah.
That allows us to do exactly this. That's in writing, and it is Greenbelt. And we supported Greenbelt in its efforts. And as a lot of people will tell you, one part of our support went directly to the question of river access. Right. I was there at the open space when they made their presentation, and given our response, we actually, dare I say it, told them they were asking for too little money from us. In part because it provided river access. I'm sorry to do that, Angus, you weren't around that at the time, but yeah, it was, we were all excited, but it was in part, not just because of trails, it was in part because of the river access, which, you know, this is a site that is very common throughout Essex County. Yeah, every town on the river, every you know, there's just tons of places like this. They're small, they get used mostly around high tides. So it's not like it's a 24-hour day thing. It's really, you are limited by the times, certainly. They have a low impact if they're set up correctly, which is got to be one of the goals there. And I don't think you've been getting a lot of complaints about the parking spaces at the trailhead, for instance. I don't know, have you gotten a lot of complaints about?
I wouldn't say a lot, but
Oh, you've gotten a few, okay.
I've heard a couple.
Yeah, we heard a couple, right,
Yeah.
so, but I can tell you, for instance, we have this windy Coffin Street, and there's parking there for the trail that goes in off of
From
Coffin
Riverbend,
Street.
yeah.
All that really does is it just, it's nice traffic calming.
Before that corner,
Before that corner, so
Yeah.
I mean, really.
doing a service.
Yeah, exactly. In a way, you are doing a service. I always get a kick out of the guy who's up there watching his dog. He's there regularly. So yeah, we become one lane at certain hours of the day. So, no big deal. Anyways, that's just my personal thing.
So what would the application, who was going to develop the scope for this? I mean, do you have a consultant in mind, or is it something?
We're looking for your support, and we're gonna flesh it out at a later date.
Okay,
We're gonna go through a process, and we're gonna come back with something that hopefully has been discussed by many.
Mhm.
We'll have a much better sense, as we go through this process, which it might be clearer, there's a definite first step. And when we get to a point where there's a definite first step, we'll be back here because we're looking for the funding, because we can't do anything without funding. We have no budget. So if we get to a point where it's clear that this first step to be taken, that's why I say it probably will be iterative in some sense, and it'll probably go over a couple of steps. But at a minimum, I'd love to get better mapping staked out and some impressions of what we're dealing with as it may relate to a path, to a waterway, and parking. I mean, that is the most common type of put in our area. It's a path to the water. And it's parking. That might be 80% of the project.
Yeah.
So I mean, cutting off, but I would just move that, I would move that we, that we.
Please.
that
If you're
we-
supporting this,
that-
please
that-
come
No,
on.
I would move that we support
Okay, thank
the
you.
effort to begin the effort
Yes.
to get river access at that parcel on
Thank you.
River Road. That was part of the discussion back close to 2 years ago now, maybe it is 2 years ago now, when we were talking about a CR held by the town
Yep.
on that parcel, and that was a critical part of that. I at least, I consider that to be a very significant
Critical element.
part of that conversation.
If we don't accomplish this,
Right.
there are gonna be people that think we have failed in a basic promise.
And additionally, Greenbelt at the time we were doing that was they were part and parcel, they were on board with it too. It wasn't something that they just, well, we'll appease them to get this CR. They were positive
Right,
about it.
Yeah,
Yes.
they will support us to a great extent, but I tell you that they expect us to be carrying. the ball.
But if I recall correctly, in the CR, although it was would largely be the town's responsibility to follow through on this, if I recall correctly, in the wording, there was the caveat that Greenbelt could do it at their own expense if they chose.
If they really wanted to, they
They
could.
really wanted to.
But it's more in our interest to do it than.
Certainly because
Right.
the discussions I've had with them lead me to believe that they would prefer we do it.
Yeah.
That's my guess. I mean, we can have further discussions on that, but I really think that they will be more cooperative when it's us taking it up rather than us trying to get them to take it up, when it may be one more thing that they just can't take on right now.
Yeah.
That's what we've been experiencing. That's why we've been experiencing anyways. And I don't blame them for it. I mean, they're doing a lot of good work, so. I'm just happy to have the possible access, that's all.
So I'll second the motion. I have a question.
Go.
You did make a motion, right? So all right, so are you intending to apply for CBA funds or
Yep.
not? You are? Okay.
Yes, absolutely,
Okay,
100%.
all right. That was my understanding. I just wanted. to
Probably
confirm.
keep you apprised as we go through it.
Well, I'm on the CPA, so I'll know.
Yeah, but the board,
Yes,
we're gonna need the board's support.
right.
We love your support, but we're gonna need the board's support too, so. You wear too many, well, not too many hats, but, so anyways, thank you very much.
Okay, further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barry. Lisa,
Thank you.
Lisa.
Our next item is a little discussion of what's happening with the harbor committee. Yeah, Brad?
Sure.
Hi.
How you doing? Yeah, just have to look at 3 times.
So, yeah, we had a couple of, a couple of things that are on my mind, and we'll see what the other board members feel, but, so I guess the first question is where do we stand with the whole idea of setting up the mooring field? Where did that finally end up? What does the committee feel about? Should the town go forward with that, or why don't you talk about that for a minute, Brad?
So the last time I think we met with this board, we're actually in a very similar position to Rob, except that we actually, because we generate revenue ourselves, we had some money and we had done a study, call it a phase 1 study, to be able to go and map out an area and do some of that initial design work to determine whether or not, there was potential feasibility for, some moorings, outside of Indian River there. And if you remember, kind of the impetus behind all of that is really to help manage, some of what was going on there in terms of people going and, putting moorings in, which currently they're allowed to do. And, manage that a little bit more appropriately. So over time, we have a little bit of control, for lack of a better term. And so we had GZA, who does this type of work, come through and map that out, and we presented it to this board. And I think it was at the board's suggestion that we actually go to CPA and try and seek some funding there to see if they would be willing to fund that through CPA. And ultimately we did that. We presented there, and that was denied as not an appropriate use for CPA funding. So, that's not for us to judge one way or another, but, we kind of ran that one down, and, that ended up in a dead end. So we haven't taken any additional action on that. I think, when we met with this board, I guess our thought on that was it didn't seem like it was that important to people. There were some questions there. So, we have that study, which is sitting there, and the river's really not changing that much. There were some questions about access, which we had talked about. There's no, as you just heard, really, there's not a lot of access on the river at the moment. Maybe that changes over time. There was the idea that we floated that we could set something up because 2 of the moorings that are currently in use at that location, that are permitted through the town, have access from the other side of the river at the Davy Jones Marina, and that could be something where some type of arrangement could be put there. You could have a dinghy dock, and then people would shuttle back and forth, which is what they currently do. And so something like that could happen as well.
So does that marina have a launch, or do people have to row over, or what do they do?
So people like the kind of the general thing is people have little inflatables with little outboard motors for
Okay.
the most part, and they just put them there, and then they zip across, and they would have a boat that would be on mooring there. And so we mapped that out. I think we had different options for how many moorings we could pursue. But since it kind of got dead ended at CPA, we haven't taken any further action on that. There hasn't, actually, there's been a little bit of a decline in terms of some of the moorings that were out there. Right now, there's, I think, only 3 that are currently there. And we had some that were just put out there, but those don't seem to have come back. So that's really where we sit with that.
What you said, they were just put out there, but they didn't come back, I'm not.
So there's only 3 moorings there. At one point, there were 6.
Oh, okay.
And are these permitted moorings or would you
The
know?
3 that are there right now are permanent, yes.
Were some of the 6?
Were the other ones
They-
just sort of
Were they,
road
were they
moorings?
pirated?
I think there was perhaps a little road going on.
Yeah.
Okay,
So that's where that currently stands. One thing about the harbor committee is we don't really have a harbor per se. We don't really have a lot of things that the harbor committee really oversees. Wendy and I, we had spoke at one point about, the dock permits, which really isn't within our purview. Occasionally we'll get Angus will give us a call and say, hey, somebody may have a question about a mooring as to whether or not it's appropriate. There was something that was Twig Rush. There was a mooring field that was put in up there where they had all of their access and everything straightened around. The question was, was it too close to other moorings or too close to the river channel to be safe? And so Tom Goodwin, Terry Hartford, and myself, we all went out, looked at that, and we didn't see any issues with that, and we reported that back to Angus. So there's not really a lot that the harbor committee has to do. There's not a lot of jurisdiction that we have. And the one thing that we had talked about, which was the potential for that mooring field, maybe if there's river access or if the board would like us to pursue something more immediately, we certainly can do that. That's really about it, though.
do we know that all the moorings that I know there's a list and people pay their boat excise taxes and so forth, but do we know that all the boats that are moored on the river are they actually registered with the town?
The boats or the
The
moorings?
moorings and the boats,
So
yeah.
the current mooring and docks actually as well, right? There's a list of all of those, and those are all each year. Those are sent out through Angus's office to be able to go and tell everybody that it's time again, right?
Yeah, and we started with stickers a couple of years ago. There hadn't previously been stickers. Now people get a decal for the year. So there's something,
I'm fully paid, by the way.
I can attest to that.
Yeah, last year was a little delinquent, but we corrected that.
No, but I just wondered, so how do we know though that the moorings that are out there are are all the moorings that are on there? If we haven't got them mapped, how do we know that?
That's a good question.
That there's a mooring area and there's 18 moorings there, but there's 14 people on the list. No one would notice it really unless they were actually mapped.
That's true. And, we don't have that right now. I guess that's something that we could do. We could, put a map together with the list so you could see that. And then it would be a question of, enforcement and how do we enforce. But we don't really have a harbor master at the moment per se. We haven't, for a number of years. We had a boat at one time, and then we decided that we'd actually keep the boat, right, which we got through a pump out grant. Like keep that boat and actually essentially put that on loan to Salisbury, and then pay Salisbury a nominal amount through their harbor master office to go and patrol the boat, the river, which they've been doing, right? As a matter of fact, I saw them out there on Sunday, right, going back and forth, and I think that's been helpful, right? Particularly, at the bridge there, I think a presence there every now and then keeps people, because you're supposed to slow down, right, when you're going under the bridge there to no wake, and I think the occasional presence there has been helpful. There's, kind of that sandbar that now is out in the middle of the river. We see them there occasionally, and I think that's helpful just from a safety perspective. And then Amesbury also, we see them, they're doing their patrols as well, right? But I think it's actually, Archie, to your point, it's really much more of an honor system than an enforcement system, and getting the letter from Angus's office saying, by the way, you're overdue. Right, so all the ones that are permitted, we know if they paid or not, but we don't have anything mapped.
The only reason I'm asking, I'm just like, my experience with other towns and moorings I've had and stuff, and you can't even you can't move it 18 inches without the harbor master being on the case or whatever, so.
Yeah.
But those are probably places that actually have harbors and that have a lot more demand on the resource. So-
Yeah, and I think those are part, you're talking about Marblehead, is that what, if I remember where you?
Well, I was talking about Gloucester or Rockport, but
Yeah.
either one, yeah.
So like in those areas right there where they have like the town, kind of mooring areas, right? Those are managed by the town versus, kind of like the individual ones which are out in front of people's houses. So certainly, if we had something where there was a town mooring field, those would be mapped. And people, just as a matter of practice, it's hard to believe, but like those moorings, a lot of times people just lose them, right? The ice comes, we lost 2 this year. And so then they have to go and replace them and they put them generally back, where they were in front of their, in front of their house, for the most part. There's another one at River Meadow, which has several moorings that go with that neighborhood, right? And then the most recent one we saw, which was the one that we were asked to go and review, was up by Twig Rush, not Twig Rush itself, it's that other neighborhood adjacent to that, where they have a right-of-way access to there, and they put their dock in, and they have several moorings up there. But otherwise, it's pretty much individual landowners.
Good.
And so does the permit, are there requirements for what kind of mooring, what the physical?
So that really is dictated a little bit more in terms of the permitting process, right? The permitting process is really more along the lines of, what Concom is going to ask for, the kind of the state of the art per se, is to go and drive helicals now instead of going and doing, kind of concrete moorings that has been more traditional. So those work fine. And, we have no real opinion on either way, but that's really dictated by Concom. Certain areas, if you get up further towards Haverhill, and, I'm not aware of any helicals that have been done on the West Newbury side, but there may have been. You run into rock, bedrock, and then that really doesn't work. And so I know in a recent house that was done over on the Haverhill side, they actually started out, Haverhill did, with the helicals, and then they couldn't get them in. They said, no, we'll allow you to go and put the concrete ones down. That seemed to work just fine. But that's really dictated more by, in terms of the permitting process, through Concom for access to. And then I guess the question, I know Concom's position on this, but again, we can take no issue with it, is that they have jurisdiction on that. And then depending on the type of mooring or number of moorings, location of those, that may or may not require Army Corps of Engineers to get involved, right? And the type of use, if there's somebody who's coming in and asking for a marina type use, right, then that would, kind of trigger the Army Corps getting involved as well.
So when, sort of back to the note about helicals, is the reason for using a helical mooring, I assume you mean like helical screw, and you, okay, and you push it in until you hit refusal or not, or whatever, however deep it has to go. Is that, are those used for environmental considerations or because of navigation hazard?
No, I think it's more environmental here, right? Because Wendy can speak to this probably better than I can, right? But it's less of a footprint.
Yeah.
Right, and so if you had, seagrass or eelgrass, which is usually, what we're talking about here, if you have obviously a 4x4 piece of concrete, well, it's not going to grow under that, so it's less of a footprint. It depends on where you are, in the river. Some areas, right, it's very depending on where the current's scoured, and there's nothing there, right? When you go and dive for those moorings that you've lost, right, all it is it's a barren moonscape. But if you get down into other locations, some areas you will have, more growth.
So if somebody wants to put a mooring in, the harbor committee is not involved at all? I'm trying to figure out how the Concom and your committee work together.
Not since, I think I've been on this committee for about 5 years, and we've never had a dock, or permit type issue come before us.
Okay,
Right, it hasn't been within our purview. Angus and I looked at that, and it seems to be more of a look at, is there something that would be created by putting a mooring in that could create some type of safety hazard, in terms of navigation in the river or potential conflict with, somebody else who already has a mooring in place just because the swing wasn't designated properly. Right, and then it also depends on, where you are, the depth that you have, the tides.
so there could be a role for the harbor committee to just sign off on a new mooring, right, to look at those things that you just described.
It could, but I think it's actually probably more of a Concom question, than it is for us. I mean, we could, right? But if you have, a piece of property that's on the river by right, you're able to go and ask for that, and then it becomes, how do you get to it?
Right, so I'm just thinking of, like for building projects as a checkoff, for the building department as a checkoff, Concom, I mean,
Yeah.
it seems like your concern or the harbor committee's concerns about boat swing and that kind of thing would not be covered by the Concom review.
We certainly could do that, yeah, we haven't historically, but I mean.
Yeah.
It's usually pretty straightforward,
Mhm,
right?
okay.
So it isn't usually an issue where there's so many vessels that you're worrying about a swing at low tide or anything, and no.
No, there's only, like I said, there's really only 2 areas on the West Newbury that I'm aware of, side of the river where there's multiple moorings.
Okay,
Two, and the usual rule of thumb for people that I believe are coming in is, they want to have some type of access with the dock. And then depending upon how much depth they have there, right, and, how wide the river is there because of, kind of the wave action when the boats are going by, they may decide that they want to go and put their boat out on a mooring, right, so that it doesn't get beat up as much, or that they don't have enough depth to support it without having to go way far
Right.
out, right? Because it gets expensive pretty quick too for people to have to do that. Just.
to put the dock out further, you mean, yeah.
Because it's pretty shallow. It's pretty shallow at low tide, as that area that Rob's talking about, right? That gets pretty shallow at low tide in that area.
Any other questions?
So are you saying there's not a need for the harbor committee? I'm trying to figure out, it sounds like,
There's not a lot that we have to do,
Yeah.
right? I mean, if the town had, something to kind of administer per se, right? Then the harbor committee might have more to do.
I see.
We're a quiet little group.
So, for example, if that mooring field had gone through, then that would be something that you.
Then
would
then that's
manage.
something obviously that we do,
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
Right? That's right.
Yeah, I mean, the irony is that there might be space for a mooring field or an inappropriate place for a mooring field, except how you're gonna get there, unless you come from another town. Unless you come from Davy Jones over in Amesbury.
Right, and it's, the challenge is, I think Rob put it out there, right? The biggest challenge for all of these is going to be parking.
Yeah.
Right, because all of a sudden, depending upon the type of use for the access to the river, and how many people might be using that, it's going to dictate how many cars are going to be there and how many, people on River Road are all of a sudden going to be either supporters or detractors. I'm a river access guy, I live on River Road, but if you had 20 cars there, probably be a little bit more sensitive, right?
I don't think 20 is gonna happen.
Or even 10.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we shouldn't negotiate this.
Right. That's right.
Thank you, Brad. That's
Thank
good.
you.
Thanks.
Thanks for the update.
Sure thing.
Thanks for the helping to pull things together on the change in
While we
species
need it.
on, the change in species on the
you know,
Canvas.
everybody tries a little bit, we can always usually get that great. Okay, have a good night.
You too.
Okay, on to item F. So this has actually been on the books for quite a while. This is a small parcel of landlocked lands off River Road. There was a letter in the file from 2015 on behalf of Natalie S. Hobson offering to donate the parcel of land to the town. And so the treasurer collector brought this to my attention because this is one of the parcels that hadn't been paying taxes, and both of the former owners, I'm told, are both deceased. We did make efforts to see if we could find somebody to represent the offer to donate the land. We have not been successful in finding anyone, so I don't know whether the letter that you have in your packet from April 2015 is sufficient, but obviously, for the town to take ownership, there would need to be additional work, a conveyance, a deed recorded at the registry. So this is really on for just initially to share what we know.
Angus, I remember when this came before the board,
Oh, really?
but because I remember it's right next to the open field
Mhm.
and there's a tidal stream on the side of it, and I remember walking it to like, because before going to the meeting, I walked on the field and then just saw where it was. So this did come before the board.
Okay, it's funny. I had talked to Annie toward the end of last week to see could she review the 2015 minutes to see
I
if perhaps the
thought, when
board
I
may have
saw
already.
this on the agenda,
Yeah.
I thought, is this a different piece of property? And
Yeah,
then
so I would suggest,
think it's the
let's
same
table it.
one.
She's out on vacation this week, but next week she'll be back in the office. She can go through the 2015 minutes and find out whether it may be that the board already voted to accept it and that there was just no follow through and it was never actually formally transferred to the town's ownership. So
it probably didn't get to the Essex Register.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll just call it an informational update for tonight.
Okay, so no, I mean, I know we talked about it. I remember, like I said, walking, I wanted to go, well, let's see what it is. So, and,
Do you remember when it was exactly?
Well, the letter was April 28, 2015. So presumably would have been in the month or two following that.
Rebecca and I can do some.
Oh, you can get into their archive minutes? Great, good,
I have all the keys.
okay.
So just.
Great having a full service town clerk's office.
As a general question, would the town always accept donations? I mean, are there costs associated with obtaining a parcel?
In my experience, in other towns, if there's any concern about any environmental contamination, you do, that kind of due diligence,
Yeah.
but if there's not, it wouldn't be uncommon, especially if it's a tax title situation, which if we do nothing, this will eventually, the town could take ownership through tax title because no one's paid the taxes.
Yeah.
But where
this
the intent
this was not that situation.
right, the intent of the owner was to convey it.
Yeah.
So, and I think they probably assumed that it was conveyed. Probably out of their mind for.
I
7
think I
years.
wanted to see, well, why are they doing this? And is it dangerous or is it something?
I looked at all the
Well, no,
owners
I
around
think it's
there.
pretty clear why, the reason why they're doing it is because it has no frontage, it has no access. It's a tiny parcel that,
I was
They-
curious
they-
about
they-
this.
It's on a
It's-
tidal
it's-
river,
yeah, it's something that fluctuates tidally. And I mean, it is upland.
Were they the original owners of that area? I'm trying to figure out how this happened that they own this.
So Natalie Hobson owned a piece of, I don't know if she owned the field around there, or Natalie and her husband, whose name was Norm Hobson?
Frank,
Frank?
looks like, yeah.
Okay. But she lived off of, or just before Works Lane. I think technically it was on River Road. So it doesn't show up on this piece here, but
She was worth.
say again?
I think she was worth. don't think she was.
Yeah, that's right, yeah, worse, so it would have been worse line, but, all right, so.
And she owns
so-
a big,
so-
big parcel there, but I don't know why. I have no idea
Yeah.
why this little piece is floating around, because a lot of that land could pay, but. Whatever.
Okay.
No pun intended, but it actually is kind of floating. It's very wet there.
Okay.
Isn't it, I thought that was upland, sort of the, well,
Yeah, it is
would
on
be-
the other
it-
side.
It would be the, the sort of the easternmost corner of that hill that, was it Ironwood, Lane was built on?
No, this,
No,
No, this is flat and,
It is, okay.
yeah.
it's
Well,
before iron.
it slopes up to that kind of log cabin house, yeah. All right, Jim, do your magic.
All right, so you'll hear more about this once we've got more complete info. All right, now we're into appointments, and I want to thank those of you who are here for appointments for your patience. We normally put those earlier on the agenda, but where we had some of the earlier topics, we wanted to.
When we have outside people, we try to let them.
Yeah, and where normally the appointments are like 1 or 2 or 3 people, but we have the reappointments for the entire fiscal year. We thought it might be quick or it might not, so we'll see. So the first one, we've got Chief Dwyer here to represent the request to appoint Officer Parento as acting sergeant effective July 1st. He's
Am I?
Look. Yeah, so I am requesting the appointment for Rich Parento to be the acting sergeant for the Westonbury Police Department. Just a little background on Rich, he's a graduate of Pentucket Regional High School, holds a bachelor's degree from Suffolk University and master's degree from Salem State University. He's worked for us for, 12 or 13 years now, works his way through dispatch. He held a supervisory role as lead dispatcher, was a reserve police officer, and then was appointed full-time officer back in 2014. So he graduated from the 2015 NECO Police Academy with honors. I could probably go on and on tonight about how great of a person Rich is. He knows everything to do with the operations over at the police station. Primarily works day shift, which is perfect for this role, for the acting position. But he's good. He does a really great job for us, so.
So would this be a 1-year appointment?
So this would be just to fill a vacancy.
Yeah, okay.
I move that we approve the appointment of Rich Parento to acting sergeant. I guess through June 30th, 2023.
Do we want to make it clear? I think it would just be effective July 1.
I think that's the better, yeah, because it's to fill the temporary vacancy.
Yeah, okay,
Or
okay.
unavailability.
So do we then say anything about an end date, or is it just an open end date?
I think it would be, as in the memo during the, for an effective date, July 1st, would remain in place in the absence of the regular
Okay.
sergeant.
Yeah. So, all right, so then I'll rephrase that. I move that we appoint Rich Parento as as acting sergeant, effective July 1st, until it's no longer necessary for him to be in that position.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Mike, you want to say a word about Jessica graduating from the academy too?
Oh, yeah, so Jess Eng just graduated on Friday from the NECO Full-Time Police Academy, and she is back with us, and she's pretty excited. So it's a long, like I said in the memo, it's a long journey back in January that she started. She's happy to be back.
So the board gives her our congratulations.
Thank you. I will make sure to pass it on.
Next is, Rob, you're up again.
Does he need to be sworn in?
To the new position.
I think so. Okay. So we'll connect. Sure.
So I've made application to the board to become a member of the finance committee. That's all I have to say.
You're hired.
But I guess that means that you'll have to resign from the river access.
Unfortunately, I won't be before you ever again on the river access committee, which probably is for the better, but,
I don't know about that.
but anyway, yes, you're right.
No, it's,
So
see, the finance committee is great. They can't bug you to do anything else. They only do that.
it's safety, yes.
If I could make a point,
Uh-oh.
B, C, and D kind of all flow in together. So before you take a vote on an individual, if you look at the item D, it actually includes, I believe, Rob in that.
Oh, so I think, yeah, when you get to the actual motion, if you want to approve these in mass, since the exhibit's in your.
So I'm already
packet.
included in something. I didn't have to actually get up and speak.
Well, where you and we also, we had others who were new appointees who wanted to invite you, but most of these are reappointments.
Good, okay. Anything else?
Well, actually, so at the moment,
I'm confused.
what's the current?
So we
On
are
that list
currently,
you're gonna be taking.
yeah, so the request is for appointment for FY '23, because
Okay,
as
all
of
right,
this
okay.
moment, we have a full
Okay,
FinCom.
so there are, yes, there are.
Yeah, but as of
July 1st,
Friday,
there will be.
both Gary and Nathan's terms will
You need a
expire.
committee to keep track of FinCom membership, right?
It's my job. That's what I do.
That's-
We got a full service town clerk's office. who's-
Yes, we have that person.
Yeah,
Thank you.
people.
We got people. Okay then, thank you. I'll wait and see how you do on the following item.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
And I know we have Jill present and we have,
John Hill.
great.
So John is here for the associate position on conservation, if you'd like to hear from him, and Jill
And Jill is on
here
via Zoom.
for the cultural council.
Good evening, John. Nice to see you.
Thank you for considering my application for the associate position. The reason I'm interested in the position is I very recently attended a number of Conservation Commission meetings in connection with a project that my neighbor was pursuing, and we were supportive of that project, and that's what exposed me to the goings on at the committee. I also, so happens I've recently retired, looking to stay engaged. I would like to add that I recently attended the Memorial Day celebration. And at the library, there was a talk given, and there was a person, the Grand Marshal of the parade, who was recognized for his contributions and involvement in the community. And it just sort of gave me the bug to want to do something for my community. We've been here, my wife Deborah, we've been here for 3 years now, and I have the time. I can't always say I had that time, now I do. And I think that the committee, the business that they do, I think is well worthwhile. And I would look forward to getting involved as an associate because it would give me that opportunity to acclimate to the process. Yes.
Thanks for stepping forward.
And there's probably a full-time or not
In
associate
August,
member.
yeah.
In
I
August,
did hear that.
Yeah.
As of when?
August.
But-
In August.
Oh,
There'll
okay.
be a resignation from the committee because a member is leaving town.
Okay.
So a couple months as an associate, you'll be ready to
Right.
run the commission, right?
As I looked into the process, I realized that there was the opportunities to get educated very
Mhm.
quickly.
Yeah.
So I have actually enrolled in some of the programs.
Oh, great, through MACC,
I took one,
Yeah.
delineation of wetlands.
nice.
I spent the day doing that, and it's very interesting.
Did you go down to Marion?
I did.
Yeah,
Yes.
I did that one as well. Yeah. Great.
So motion?
Yeah, move that we appoint John Haley as associate member of the Conservation Commission, effective July 1st, And,
Usually run for 1 year.
yeah, and I guess through June 30th of 2023, which of course will be open to change sometime in August if you choose to apply for the full position.
Definitely will consider that.
Right.
Yes.
Second,
Further discussion, all in favor?
I,
Aye.
thank you.
Great, thanks a lot.
In case it's important, and I did notice that you're voting on a list of people, my name is on there, but it is misspelled.
Oh, it is.
Yes.
I apologize.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I added a D where there didn't need to be one.
So does John need to be sworn in?
Yeah, so John, I'll email you.
Okay.
Along with everyone else that gets appointed tonight, about swearing in, things like that.
So I guess we went ahead and ignored your.
You did, you absolutely did.
Now I'm feeling slighted.
You're
Okay, you're gonna have to give me some tips.
Additionally, Jill is here as well, who will be, she's going for the cultural council.
Hi, Jill.
Hi, good evening.
Hi.
I just want to say thank you for your consideration for this appointment. I hope it goes well. And I look forward to serving the town. I've been a citizen of the town for over 50 years and have worked on a couple different committees over the years and would like to continue working to serve our community.
Great.
Great.
Yeah, I move that we appoint Jill Eikers to the cultural council.
Okay, now I'm getting hurt. Nothing to do with you.
So how long is the term? Perhaps it'd be better to do it en masse so that we have
Yeah.
everything.
The cultural council appointment would be till June 30th of 2025.
It's a 3-year term.
Yes, because she'll be starting July 1st, filling the, there's 3 seats that are up for reappointment. Actually, there's multiple seats, but there's 3 seats that aren't going for reappointment. And Jill will be filling.
So is Jill's name on the list of?
It is, yep.
Oh, okay, so, yeah, why are we handling?
You're the one that made the
You're the one who
motion.
I don't get what the problem is.
Yeah.
So we have the entire slate to approve, and these people are already on that entire slate, so
Yeah.
by making separate motions.
But
But it only takes a second. We're talking about it. We could have voted it. You can start talking about it.
I
We just
understand
voted.
that you've now gotten specific attention, and Jill has, and John has.
Yes,
That's good. That's good.
And now we're gonna do the whole slate.
Then we're gonna do the whole slate.
Okay, stop talking about it and then we can get it done.
So
Talking about the
I'm still
process
looking
makes
to
it
see when I'm gonna be
longer.
appointed or not. You
the
understand?
slate that is been presented on page 61 and 62 gives you the term end dates for all appointments. Anything that is listed as yes means these people wish to go for reappointment. New is anyone new to that position. As you can see, we talked briefly last meeting about the coordinator for the bandstand, because Brian had asked for a little help, and Charlie is helping out, and that's who he has been working with to do this year's bandstand. The other one I wanted to point out for you was the Open Space Commission. Jessica resigned from her full term to give the position to Graham, because Graham is the only person on the Open Space Commission who is willing to be chairman at the time. So for Graham to be chairman, he needs to be in a full-time position as opposed to an associate position. So we would be switching those two of their positions. And then
So Jessica would remain on the open space committee, but
as an associate.
Got it. All right.
And then for Harbor Commission, Thomas and Terrence's positions both expired this 30th, but they need to be staggered according to the bylaw. So one needs to be a 1-year appointment, the other needs to be a 3-year appointment. That needs to be decided prior to the vote. And then the same thing with Mill Pond.
Mill Pond was not staggered, but in bylaw, it has to be staggered positions. So you can choose of the 5 people that are going for reappointment. One can do 1-year term, 2 can do 2 years, 2 can do 3 years. And you need to make that decision prior to vote. But other than that, everything else is easy.
So Jim,
Yes.
I was scanning as you were, I have, Tom Goodwin and Terry Hartford are, we have to make a decision between 1 and 3 year term.
Correct.
For them. And what were the other positions that were?
Mill Pond.
Mill Pond.
Okay.
So the entire Mill Pond committee expires, and I believe it was just a rolling process where every year you would reappoint Mill Pond, but I read through the bylaws and this is what you get when you hire
Okay.
a full-time
Why don't we
clerk
just
staff.
do it random? First one's 1, second one's 2, third one's 3.
That's,
Next one's 1, next one's 2. There you go.
well, 2, 3, but yes. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3.
Yeah.
We can do that. That's fine.
So anything not on here does not have.
So anything not on here is one of 2 things. It's either those positions are filled and they're fulfilling their term, either expiring next year or 2 years from now, or it's a completely vacant position that no one wanted to go for reappointment. And I've updated the volunteer website. If you go to our homepage, anyone listening, and you go to volunteer, it gives you a list of the up-to-date 2023 to 2024 fiscal year of current positions that are available in the town.
Okay. Well, I think Archie, you sort of started this. So I will make a motion to appoint the entire slate as shown here. Sorry that last name, the first initial or the first letter of people's last name has some impact on their fate, but it's pretty trivial impact on their fate. In this case, I would move that Thomas Goodwin be 1-year term, Terry Hartford the 3-year term, and the Mill Pond Committee, as Archie had suggested. Zip Corning for 1 year, Ryan Goodwin for 2 years, Debbie Hamilton for 3 years, Robin Pendergast for 2 years. Is that, you said it's a 2 and a 3, okay, and Matthew Schwam for a 3-year position.
Second.
And of course, Rob Phillips for. Just to make sure, and Joe Lightfoot for cultural council.
Further discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
You look happy, Wendy.
No, I'm just, so like the CPC, the new membership there,
I'm gonna follow up and
Okay.
so, but it's not by you, it's not appointments. The CPC, because of what we assume is gonna go before town meeting, either whether it goes before a fall or in the spring, I say we just appoint her for a 1-year term, so that way if that does pass, then it's.
I'm talking about like the other members who
Yeah.
are,
So that would be individually appointed by each board, so I need to just talk to each board and make sure they understand that they can't just appoint everyone for 1 year. It needs to be staggered.
okay. There may be interest in modifying the bylaw.
Okay.
On that, so.
Yeah, I mean, it did, as when Jim brought this to my attention of the staggered, we did kind of question, because I think traditionally things like Mill Pond have been just 1-year appointments where it's basically the committee's reappointed as a whole each year. So if there's a rationale for it to be staggered, I totally support, do it by the bylaw because that's what the bylaw says. But, if we're looking at housekeeping bylaws, we could see if some of those continue to make sense. Another thing that's been on my list for a while now, is on the harbor committee, it would be good to formalize the existence of alternate members, because that the bylaw just provides for 3 members. The board back in 2018 or 2019 added a couple of alternate members to get a better balance on the committee. I think that was the right decision, even though it's not specifically authorized, but as a housekeeping matter, it'd be good to formalize a larger harbor committee, I think.
And so the Concom people that were already appointed, that's, there, it was effective July 1, but.
Yeah, so the Concom people, anyone who you approved at the last meeting, I did not include in this, so
Okay.
we didn't need to take a second
Yeah.
vote. on
Okay.
this.
So he does have a complete roster, so maybe tomorrow you could send that around to the board just so they can kind of, or this week. That way they've all got the complete committee
I'll
composition.
update everything.
Okay.
And then the next point would be to update the website, make sure that's all present and kind of for as well.
Okay. I did see the Affordable Housing Trust when Angus just pulled the page up, and that's
Yep.
6 members.
Yeah, so since there's already been some interest, I didn't want to put up and say there's a full membership, because I'm sure there were several people that
Yeah.
are qualified so far. So I just put a random number,
Okay.
honestly. For that one.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks for pulling this all together. This was much simpler than the previous different colored.
Yeah, that was more for my edification
Well,
and
this is
keeping track
helpful.
in my head. So.
It's a lot to keep up with. It
Yeah,
really
for
is.
sure.
Okay, so we had a motion, a second, a vote, so I think we're set with that.
Yeah.
Right, and on to the staff reappointment. So this is something the board's done every year. I think some of these are statutorily important to do, such as police. Others, I think actually others that I think are statutorily important are the town clerk, the assistant town clerk, the building commissioner, and all of those staff, ADA, the chief assessor, the treasurer collector. There are statutes that provide for appointment. So it's a little bit ambiguous where some of those are technically town manager appointees, but it didn't seem like there was any harm in kind of having. So this is a bigger list than you've seen in prior years, but I wanted to be inclusive of anyone who's either been on these reappointment lists in prior years or who has, there's a statutory basis for why they're on here. And I did add a couple of new things like the affordable housing monitoring. That's not really, I mean, it's not really a title, but it is a function that the board is responsible for under the affordable housing deed restrictions for the 13 local action units. And back in the fall of 2018 had designated the town manager to act on your behalf. So I just thought it's a good opportunity to kind of formalize that. As well as on the sexual harassment grievance officer. That was a post that Mike McCarron had held until his retirement. That is something we need to give some thought to. I think we should have 2 sexual harassment grievance officers of male and female. So that's something I did put acting. I think it's important to have a designated grievance officer, and I'm happy to serve in that role. I don't know if in the long term that's where it should sit. It doesn't even need to be a staff person. It could be, and in fact, in past years, there's Justin that has been a resident who was not a staff person. So I do see that as kind of a interim, but I wanted to make sure that we had some formal appointment of that position, because a year ago it was McCarron who had been designated that role.
So is this a supplemental?
Yeah, this is what I sent around yesterday.
I read them this. Can you put that up on the screen?
I can, but it'll take me a minute because I got to pull it out of my sent.
We can find it. It's not easy.
Yeah, I had it open. I must have closed that one.
Let's see.
Yes, GE. So while we're waiting, Rob, you're all set.
Oh, I know.
So I'll contact you and we'll get you sworn in and then go from there. Great.
Hey, Rob, thanks. Seriously,
Oh,
thanks.
don't try to make it up to him.
Thank you, Rick. I'm actually sitting around for one of your other items. No, I'm not participating. I'm interested.
Oh, that's right, there's one that you sent yesterday, I guess that's why I couldn't
Yeah.
find it, yeah.
Oh, it was the PDF one,
Yeah.
okay.
I've got it here.
Okay.
I've got it here. I'll do a screen share. So if anyone from home is wondering what we're talking about.
Gonna add a couple of these titles to my resume now. Ethics liaison.
Well, so yeah, that was one of the things that McCarran was appointed as last year. And so I didn't want to leave anything unfilled that had been on prior year's appointments. And
Particularly a title like ethics.
I know, right? To the state. They're actually gonna be building a new ethics system. So it's gonna be reporting to my office will be tremendously easier. It's actually gonna be all. So right now, what happens is you take the test, you print off a copy and you bring it to my office. In the future, it's going to be, you take the test, I'm gonna get an email that says that you took the test and I can access your certificate.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So,
the pain.
it's-
Print it out and scan it.
Just getting it from people is
Right.
the pain. Now, as long as you
I
take it.
always think the printer's not gonna work and then they gotta take the whole thing.
That
out.
Right? I think that happened the first time I did it. I think my printer didn't have papers.
So, I would volunteer to be the other grievance officer if that.
that would be great.
That's good.
Okay, so do I need training for that?
I think there probably is, and I
Yeah.
think I could benefit from that. Yeah. So.
And I just can't read, I'll have to find it, I just can't, because I can't read that.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So I had a question, like, so I noticed the police sergeants, the appointments are a 6-year.
Okay, yeah, so there's a couple of, actually, I do have a couple of updates.
Yeah.
So let's see, and I apologize for this. As you know, I was out most of last week on vacation, so it was over the weekend. I sent this to you and to Dwyer to proof. So there are actually a couple of changes under reserve officer. We ought to remove Nicholas Holmes. Who's no longer employed here. Under part-time dispatcher, we ought to remove Monique Quadros. And to remove Caitlin Chuli. Let's see, where do I see that? I don't even see that. Okay. And then there's actually 3 part-time dispatchers who should be added. That's Liam Kennedy, Samantha Holt, and Joseph Eluskowitz. ELUS. Well, it's.
You're gonna just forward that to me. then.
Yeah. So I had intended to send around an updated this afternoon, and some things came in and I lost track of it. So.
And so the school.
So getting back to Rick's question on the term, so I was looking back at last June, so the appointments of the officers at that time were 3-year appointments. So for instance, like Jay Johnson and Manny Torero last June were appointed for 3-year terms. When I sent this around over the weekend, I didn't know what the statute said about should it be 1, should it be 3. We did some additional research today under the statute. It's up to the appointing authority. So I would recommend that whatever you do, either with the officers or the sergeants, you be consistent, either 1 year or 3 year, whatever. 1 year seems, myself and Jenny, we felt like that's going to be simpler, because that way
It's just an annual renewal rather than tracking, different people on different schedules. So
That's difficult.
I think one just makes it easier.
it is easier, and the statute is non-specific. It says that the term is at the discretion of the appointing authority.
So we would want to revise, at least in the document that we have.
Yeah, you'd want to revise,
We'd want to revise the three.
for
full-time
Dorgan,
patrol
Ang, and
officers.
Roy, that those would be changed to 23 instead of 25.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I would move to appoint Paul's staff as shown on the revised list, which I can't read from here.
6/26. Wait for the date.
Oh, okay, so yeah, so with the exception of, so that's the revised list there, except it doesn't
But
have the
we
revised.
No,
also need
this-
to revise.
Yeah,
Right.
So, yeah, so, and that I would, with the modification of the full-time patrol officers, James Dorgan, Jessica Ang, and Kyle Roy, from a through date of 6/30/2023 instead of 2025.
With the additional changes that.
Yeah, with the revised.
Second. Discussion. Aye.
So Wendy, I'll follow up with you on the sexual harassment grievance officer
Okay.
and let you know what that entails.
Okay, so on the school resource officer, is that something that Mike is going to propose at a later?
Yes,
time?
yeah,
Okay.
I don't know if he has or if he's going to, but he either has or is going to advertise that within
he
the
is.
department.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, and he is aware of at least 2 or 3 officers who are going to be interested. So
Okay.
he'll go through he is going to post that and accept application. He may already have posted it.
Mhm.
It's something we've talked about. Thank you very much.
Angus, with the, I forgot about this, with the bond, is there any money from the,
No,
so we don't, so there's not a time?
correct. Yeah, that's what you'd asked me about that. No, I confirmed with them. They weren't, there's nothing they needed to
Okay.
attend for.
All right,
we'll put it-
so next item is line item transfers.
All right, so Stephanie put these together. We worked together on this, but she did, pretty much all the work. And so she's here on the call if you have any questions, but I think it's all seems to me pretty straightforward. So in accordance with the statute, we provided the detail expense for all of the lines that are proposed for transfer. So you can see kind of what contributed to the pretty modest overruns. I do want to say there will be additional line item transfers brought forward at the July 11th meeting for FinCom to consider later that week. There's always some fiscal year end things, invoices that come in after June 30th. So this is one tranche. This is not the final. There will be other proposed line item transfers, but I think all of these are pretty modest. The FinCom is scheduled to meet this Thursday, the 30th, and we'll take up any transfer requests that you refer. By statute, they need both board and FinCom approval.
Thanks.
And before we leave on with your signature on the margin.
I make a motion to approve the listed line item transfers.
Second.
Discussion, I have a discussion. And I meant to ask Chief Dwyer when he was here, but I am always curious what the status of on the expenses line item for the, I gotta find it, for the public relations consultant.
That's something, yeah, we've talked about that in the past.
I know.
I had some skepticism. I'm kind of at peace with it. I think it is a good service.
You do.
I do. I mean, whether it's worth every dollar, I think it's something that I think is probably warrants a different, a discussion.
I mean, like, why does one department have their own
Yeah, I mean,
Slack and no one else does?
Which one is this under? Which of the line transfers?
let's see, is it the fire expenses? I think that cost is split between fire and police.
It's near the top. I'll find it in a second.
Yeah, no, I got it. It's on page 73, your packet, third from the top, the John Guilfoyle Public Relations.
Okay.
The annual fee. And Stephanie, does that split between multiple departments, the Guilfoyle invoices?
Yes, I believe it's split between police and fire.
Yeah, so, you guys are you on, do you get those emails? Okay, I get a lot of them from where I live and where I used to live, and do you get any of them? From like from West Newbury. Anyhow, so maybe what we need to do is get you guys on the distribution list so you see the work product.
I've never seen anything.
Interesting. Okay, well, I didn't know that. So yeah, it is PR. They do, both. They report on things on a pretty current basis, house fires and things like that. But also there is some PR that they'll do of the cat getting rescued from the tree, or or the public community service things. I think they do a nice job. I think it's a great question to ask Archie, and what we ought to do is we put it on the agenda and have Chief Dwyer talk about, give some examples of the service. But there are times, as you know from Chief Dwyer, when something goes on, he'll send an email to all four of us pretty much like right then and there saying, hey, this is happening, which is great. Sometimes those are on off hours or weekends or late night. And I've talked to Mike in the past, because I was skeptical of this initially, because it is an expense and we are a small town, but I have talked to Mike and acknowledged that I'm kind of glad my office doesn't have to do PR on when there's major incidents. It's kind of nice that that's something that's covered. What I'm learning tonight is it's not hitting the audience needs to hit. If you three aren't subscribed to these,
anyone can log in and subscribe. If you just go right to his main webpage, there's a link and you can put in your, if anyone wants it, I can sign up. Anyone who wants to, if you want me to.
What we ought to do, I've been working with Jim's office and Rebecca for the last, month or two to try to create a comprehensive email database. We have one of chairs of boards, committees, and commissions, but we're building out one with every member of every board, committee, and commission, so that we can communicate more efficiently. And it'd be, that's something we could send around an email blast saying, hey, totally up to you, but if you want periodic updates on public safety, subscribe. I'm subscribed. I get them. I don't know. What would you say, Steph? I feel like I get 2 or 3 a week. On the week. Sometimes there's not as much activity, but I definitely, both as a employee here in West Newbury and as a resident Newburyport, I feel like I get a good sense of what's going on.
My concern, even more than the dollars, is this person representing the towns? This is an outside person. I don't know. I haven't seen any, so I can't comment on them. But how do we know that they're speaking for the town, but they're not of the town? How's that for,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I think he's out of Georgetown, if I read his
He has
website.
he has two offices, one in Georgetown and then there's one out in Western Mass. And I will say he does PR for most communities in the state of Mass.
But I think it's a great question of just kind of having Dwyer walk us through, like, what's the workflow between an incident takes place, you know, how are they notified? What are they prepared? Does he sign out? Does Dwyer sign
Yeah,
off
that
on
would be
the?
my question.
He may,
Yeah.
like, it wouldn't, I feel like there was one high profile incident maybe a couple of years ago where I was personally consulted on the language that was used. Maybe it was during COVID or something. That was the only instance I can think of where I was personally consulted before something was sent. That makes me think that Dwyer probably gives the okay before anything's sent out, but I don't know that. And but the first things, we gotta get you guys subscribed, and we can also
See,
forward some
I
samples.
knew
So
that the police was involved, but reading the ledger, I was not aware that the fire had services also.
it is something in my first 6 months on the job, I remember looking at kind of under a microscope of one of the, I will say, very, very few expenses I could find in the entire operating budget where I was like, is that really needed? Because most of the expenses, when you look at the really, I mean, I would almost say pretty much all of them are necessary. And this was one I kind of looked at initially as, do we really need that? Because where I came from up north, we didn't have that. But in the 4 years I've been here, I definitely observe value from it.
Is it police and fire?
Yeah,
This cost
So
is
this
just
one,
it's a one-time annual fee.
for both departments?
Yeah, well, I think it's split. So I think what you're seeing here is,
Just the fire portion?
I don't know, Stephanie, can you pull up the vendor and see what they're paid totally in total for the year?
What's the full vendor name, Angus, just so because it will be different.
Yeah, it's John Guilfoyle, Public
Perfect.
Relations.
Probably a question.
It just seems like if it's a public relations outfit, you shouldn't have to subscribe to the, you know,
Right,
it
well,
should be.
related to that, so you have a place where you can request email notifications.
Yeah.
But I don't see this on there.
Yeah.
What I'm more used to, so for instance, P-Town, you go to P-Town, it's common with a lot of places.
Rob, I don't think the mic is picking you up because the owl's not looking at you.
Okay.
So just
Jump up in the
either
seat.
speak up or move
Oh,
forward a little bit.
I sat in the oldest chair that you guys got. So what I was just remarking on is that you have a place for email notifications, but this doesn't appear to be one of the items that you can select. And it seems to me, I'm familiar with other towns, like Angus is, P-Town, for instance, it's all inclusive in one place, so you select what you want, but it's a comprehensive list. So it doesn't surprise, I would wonder how many people don't know that they can subscribe to this when you can subscribe to so many other different things, that's all.
And this one is actually on the police or fire website. Okay.
Yeah, actually, I was gonna make the
But that
point,
may be
there's this,
too siloed.
there's,
Yeah,
it is,
I
it is
know
too
it's not
silent.
what
No,
you're saying.
you're totally correct.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
didn't know it existed either, so.
yeah.
Interesting, when you want to do the away listing, you can't find that on the police website, but you can find it in the town under police. There may be some fragmenting going on.
No, there is. That's actually been a long-standing issue that until pretty recently, we really haven't had
But now you
the
have a
staff.
full-service town clerk.
No, honestly though, but the clerk's office,
I don't know, we're
a
gonna
big
call you
part
tomorrow,
of
Rob.
kind of what Jim and Rebecca are helping my office with is some of this outward communications, which up until a couple of months ago, me and Jenny have pretty much done ourselves, and Christine helped too, when she was the assistant town clerk. So anyhow, we're getting there, but you have definitely put your finger on an issue that's not unknown. It just hasn't been kind of a front burner, but it's a really good point that
where the West Newbury Public Safety has a completely different website, and then, but the town has a website. And there have been times, I mean, I remember Jen Solis contacted me a few months ago about like the name of, you know, names of people listed on the website were outdated on some of the officers. And so I dropped everything, spent an hour updating the page, which but there's no one on town staff whose job it was to update the police or fire page on the town website. So it's just one of those things that's part of how, as we're growing as an organization and making these kinds of things someone's job, so they don't slip through the cracks. But we could definitely do better at kind of fully syncing the police and fire with the town. So are you on the Western Public Safety? I was
Yeah, I
just,
don't see it.
well, but
Okay.
but just those
I shouldn't
updates
have
that
brought
you're showing
this
are
up.
kind of, no, it's a good
No,
point.
it's,
Yeah.
you want
It's
banks.
okay, it's only 5 after 9, so we got plenty of time.
Take your time. But it goes to the question of bank for your buck. They could be doing wonderful PR, right?
But nobody's listening.
No one's worse.
But we've already approved the budget, right, for next year, so.
So
We would change
I'm gonna
it.
do a quick,
No, right, it's not a matter of changing.
The
budget, it's a
total
matter-
budget.
You gotta spend the money, get the recipients, that's all.
Yeah.
so this is from the West Newbury Public Safety homepage. I put this up on a screen share, but you can see this is a great example of the kinds of press releases that they do. This is just on their blog, but so I get these in my inbox regularly. You know, these are the kinds of things that,
Wow.
you know, we don't have the bandwidth to do this kind of thing in-house at all. So to me, it's a value for sure. So we just need to get more people subscribed.
Right.
Could this be put on Facebook on the,
I believe it's on, so they run their own separate Facebook
Right.
for West Newbury Public Safety and West Newbury Fire.
Yeah, and that's another thing we need to do better at. Where, so for instance, Council on Aging has their own Facebook, but we've got a good system where when Christine posts something that's of broad interest, she will tag the town.
yeah.
Then me as the Facebook administrator see that we've been tagged, and then it's easy for me to reshare it.
Mhm.
We haven't developed the same kind of protocols with public safety, but with
That
it,
could
with,
be important so that people.
oh yeah, no, it's great. But I think with the chief we have now,
Yeah,
that's a snap.
okay, good.
And back to the cost of the invoices, they're no longer, so they used to be split when I first came. Now they send a separate invoice for the police and a separate invoice for fire on an annual basis.
So is the amount that we're seeing here, does that
Is that
half the
50/50,
annual cost?
Stephanie?
What?
Is it 50/50?
No, there's one that cost that you're seeing on that report is strictly for fire. Then there's
Right, but
another,
in other words, but in both departments, the same amount.
yeah,
Okay.
So the total annual cost is on the order of $6,000.
$6,000.
Is that about right? Is that what you're seeing?
yeah.
Okay.
All right, do we make a motion?
Yes.
Did we vote?
We did not have a vote.
No, because I just had to
No,
bring that.
no, we
Oh,
had
you had a
questions.
discussion.
We had a discussion.
Okay,
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, so FinCom will take those up Thursday at 6 PM.
Okay, item I. Borrowing paperwork in connection with the town's $1,060,000 bond anticipation note dated July 13th, 2022.
Okay, and the form of vote was sent around as a supplemental packet due to the length of the supporting materials, but there's a document with a heading vote of the select board. So if you're in agreement, it would be to make a motion to approve the vote as written in this document.
Move to approve the note as written. the document.
It says vote on the headline there.
Okay. That,
Second,
And
just
just,
curious, did anybody pick up that typo on that 119-page document?
No.
Yeah, I'm having
it
trouble
was
finding
very
it.
interesting because there's a
Oh,
lot
it's
of
great.
information about the town all lumped together. It was kind of
No, it's like a
kind
synopsis
of
of the
worthwhile.
town.
I read a
isn't it?
lot of it, yeah.
Yeah. But there's a lot there.
What was the spelling mistake?
no, but there was one that you pointed out
Yeah.
back when we did the official statement a couple of months ago, so. Yeah, so here it is. So it was in the, Jenny had sent around a couple of supplemental
You know,
packets, so.
my attachments are, like, they won't open for some reason when there's a queue of emails.
Okay,
I have to go back through and break it down. It's kind of
Okay.
challenging.
yeah, there were, so obviously like the traffic study itself was
in
its
one
own,
document, yeah.
and all this bond anticipation note was its own packet, because it was just so much material. So, yeah, for those watching from home, the board is being asked to approve the sale of bond anticipation notes, which are being used to finance the water capital projects, including the Break Hill water tank replacement and the water treatment building, chemical treatment building over at the well field. And at some point, this 1.1 million will be converted to long-term debt, but at this point, we've been rolling it forward annually with bond anticipation notes on the advice of our financial advisor, Hilltop Securities, because they've said that we're going to be better off both financially and administratively if the town has any other borrowing in the next couple of years to roll it into a larger bond issue rather than having all these separate, what they would view as very small dollar bond issues. So the reason it's 1,060,000 instead of the 1.1 million that you voted last year is that you can do up to 10 years of bond anticipation notes, but when you get to the third year, you have to start paying down principal. The first 2 years are interest only. So we're paying down, we've already paid down 40, well, makes it sound like it's a lot. Anyhow, we've paid down 40 grand of the 1.1 million. So that's reduced the principal to 1,060,000.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And that goes to sign it.
Great, thank you.
Next item is request for authorization of ARPA funds to contract for study of paid school water lines. So one of the items that do appear to be fall in the purview of ARPA funding is clean water. So that's how this is.
Well, it is, so there's.
But also now it's expanded, so.
Exactly, yeah, that's really the kind of leading point in this is the revenue loss, which initially, when ARPA first came out, you needed to prove out your revenue loss as a result of COVID in order to then claim a certain amount of revenue loss, which once ARPA funds are classified as replacing lost revenue, it significantly broadens the allowable uses to basically any eligible use of public funds, other than some exceptions like
There was a few
capital
pension things
funding.
you couldn't
Yeah,
do.
right, but it greatly expands the allowable uses. Initially, when ARPA first came out, you had to kind of prove that out, and that was a pretty extensive accounting exercise that consultants were charging towns upwards of like $5,000 to do the calculation to prove out the revenue loss. Then the Treasury issued some updated guidelines and basically now said you can claim up to $10 million of
as revenue loss without having to prove it out. So taking that step then significantly broadens the allowable uses of the ARPA funds. So with that, it doesn't become, it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to fit into a box as to whether it's ARPA eligible. So Stephanie, would it be recommended that the board take a vote to kind of declare the ARPA funds revenue loss? Is procedurally, is that important for them to do or not?
Yes, that would be good for them to do. And then if they want to go forward with the project provided, a vote for that.
Yeah, that'd be a separate vote. And
Yep.
Stephanie's done some research on just kind of form of vote. And you can see in here, we put together the brief summary. And so the board, so yeah, it's really two different things.
Yeah.
You want to declare it revenue loss, and then if you're supportive of going forward with this study with Fitzmeyer and Tachi on page 98, 99 of your packet is the form of action that we put together. We wanted to set something that we can then use consistently going forward for any further use of ARPA funds.
So do we want to declare the entire lump sum that way, or just the amount that we're going to use for the study?
It's obviously it's up to you. If you feel that you know enough about how the whole revenue loss thing works to declare it all revenue loss, I think that is in the town's best interest because it totally broadens it. But if you still want to learn more about that or chew on that a little more, you could.
I would recommend that the town, that the select board vote to move revenue loss, Angus, only because of the application that we submitted for the standard deduction. That way there, it can cover any project under the governmental services window, which is everything. Otherwise, it's going to make it more complex. But I also recommend that every single project is voted on by you as well.
Seems kind of weird that we're calling this, I guess I don't know enough of the base,
They just changed the rules halfway through the game.
Yeah, but I mean, it's sort of like it's, calling this revenue losses, it's like.
It's just the name of it.
Yeah.
It's
So
not.
there's no
Apparently,
implications?
it's new speak.
But is it going to come back to bite us?
Yeah, well, that's
Is the memo?
I feel like I'm
Yeah.
doing something dishonest,
Yeah.
yeah. But I guess that's
No,
what.
it's not gonna come back.
But I don't want you guys voting on anything you're not totally comfortable with. That's why, because Stephanie, I think they're gonna end up voting it all anyway, eventually, is my guess. But
I didn't know if they had the chance to read the memo that I wrote.
the memo's in there. The memo's in
Explaining
there.
everything regarding the revenue loss in detail.
I read it all. Still, it
Yeah.
seems like a stretch of the use of language, but I guess if that's what the Treasury says is the way it should be handled, then
So that's
Oh,
saying
my.
that we believe that we lost up to $10 million in revenue?
well, I don't know if we have to say 10 million because we're not
Well,
looking at 10 million.
let's.
No, we're looking at
We're only
1.4
looking at
million.
1.4 million.
Yeah.
but
So it's kind of
even
like a
then-
standard deduction on your taxes. So this is from the Treasury kind of guide, the updated one from January.
Right, think about
So-
it that way.
Yeah, that's a good example.
Wait, like, in other words, you gave 37 cents to the Red Cross, but so instead of that, you just take the standard deduction, instead of itemizing your deduction.
Yeah, and so this is from the Treasury guide. It basically spells out so determining revenue loss, recipients have two options for how to determine their amount of revenue loss. Recipients must choose one of the two options and cannot switch between these approaches after an election is made. The first is to elect a standard allowance. Recipients may elect a standard allowance of $10 million to spend on government services through the period of performance. And it kind of elaborates under this option, which is newly offered in the final rule, Treasury presumes that up to 10 million in revenue, has been lost due to the public health emergency, and recipients are permitted to use that amount not to exceed the award amount to fund government services. The standard allowance provides an estimate of revenue loss that's based on an extensive analysis of average revenue loss across states and localities, and offers a simple, convenient way to determine revenue loss, particularly for SLURF's smallest recipients, which we are among the smallest recipients. All recipients may elect to use this standard allowance instead of calculating lost revenue using the formula below, including those with total allocations of $10 million or less. Electing the standard allowance does not increase or decrease a recipient's total allocation. Then it goes on the alternative way, which is that you can calculate your actual revenue loss according to a formula. And that goes on for, that's something we need to engage like an outside accounting firm. So it seems to me that
And we wouldn't get anywhere near that much.
Well,
No.
basically-
We wouldn't have to with the new final rule. We wouldn't have to do the calculation. That's why they did the final rule.
Exactly.
And that's a treasury document right there.
correct. Yeah, that's right from the
Once you get
Department of
I'm
Treasury.
comfortable with.
So,
Yeah.
so how do we determine the amount? Is the amount based on our budget or?
Yeah, it would be the total amount of the ARPA funds, up to 10 million. Obviously, our amount is like 1.4 million.
Yeah, okay,
No, but
Um,
I think Wendy wants to know, where's the 1.4 come?
yeah, so it's just what we're eligible for.
Correct. Yeah, we've received half of that, and we will receive, I believe, in the next couple of weeks, in the next month, we're going to receive the remaining amount.
So
That comes from the state, right? The state determines what you.
The allocation is, yeah,
From the state.
the money's from the feds, but the way it's
The
allocated.
state divvied it up.
Yeah, and part of why we got more than what we initially thought we were gonna get is because there was a certain amount designated for counties. And because there's not an effective county, that was apportioned based on presumably a population,
Within
formula,
Essex County.
but my take on this whole like revenue loss thing is initially it was very like bureaucratic and time and resource intensive to calculate your revenue loss. And I think the Treasury probably felt, or the feds, maybe it was the president, someone probably felt the money wasn't being spent fast enough, started doing some research and realizing there were tens of thousands of municipalities like ours that our hands are tied because it's so limited, the allowable uses. And so they significantly liberalized. And now you can just like a standard
But
deduction
also,
declare.
there was a huge prediction that tax revenues would be massively hit during the pandemic, and it turned out that the
It didn't happen.
collections were almost 100%.
Mhm.
So that didn't happen,
Correct, yeah.
But the money was still available.
right?
They did the same thing with private industry.
Yeah.
They had out with one set of rules, and they said, just never mind that, do it this way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so where?
So it's actually like a
Where do we
great
stand?
lifeline
So-
for us.
Okay, so, we have to phrase this correctly. I would make a motion to, categorize the town's ARPA funding, under the category, as standard revenue loss.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, so now we want to talk about the project at the page, so.
I have a question on this. What's the interrelationship with the SWIG?
So the SWIG is how we got kind of started on this initially, because we were approached by Pentucket back in the winter to see if we'd be interested in pursuing the SWIG grant for the actual drinking fountain apparatus. When we started looking at it, we said, we feel like there is an issue of water quality that fixing the units themselves will not address. We don't know how extensive that may be. And so we said it doesn't make sense to apply for funds, especially with the SWIG grant. There was a requirement that you had to fully expend the funds within a year. And so we said it doesn't make sense to swap out drinking water bubblers if within your pipes there might be lead solder or something.
So was any water quality sampling done to determine, whether it's?
Oh, they do. Yeah, they do water quality sampling,
to
regularly.
distinguish whether it's the point of use device or whether it's in the pipes.
I'm not for which location.
Well, just for any location, typically to determine whether it was the bubbler or the pipes, you would collect samples before the bubbler, and then comparing them, you could tell, whether it's from the pipes or from the device itself. It doesn't seem like there's been any water quality sampling, so I was just curious about how that determination was made.
There has been in the past.
Yeah, no, there is regularly at different locations, and I know back in the fall of, I want to say, actually, it might have been fall or winter of 2018. It was my first 6 months on the job. There was some testing that came in above, and I worked with the superintendent. A letter had to be sent to every parent. And part of the issue was the testing, the time of day the testing was done, which was a little different than what they normally did. And that contributed to an elevated level, and notice had to be sent. And so they do regular testing. They have to do that. And all of the federal limits are met, but there are some water quality issues that we think would, we would understand better if we undertook a study like this. So I sent around the Bagnell one just as a sample of the kind of work product that we could expect if we do go forward. Because they did go ahead and basically approve the initial, when they got the proposal back in January, they just kind of went ahead with it, whereas we decided to wait and learn a little bit more.
And so did they share the report?
They did.
Okay, I don't remember.
Yeah, that was one of the many supplemental.
Okay.
So, and this isn't, and there's a hard copy if you'd like, but that was sent around last week. So, and if you guys want to table this for 2 weeks, there is no downside to that. There's not any deadline for this, and that where this is being, proposed as the first expenditure of ARPA funds, I want to make sure you guys are totally supportive. So if you didn't see the sample from Bagnell, if you table it for 2 weeks, that's totally fine.
Yeah, I mean, I ran through it in detail, and it seems like it makes sense. Page is such a big topic, but this is an issue that one way or another has to be looked at for Page, I think, and money is there to be used, and
This to me is not a frivolous use of.
no.
No, I'm not
it's
suggesting it is. It just, I didn't see any water quality sampling in here, and that's excluded from the scope. So
Yeah, that's not in there exactly.
Yeah, so what's the cost of that? Who does that,
So I think there's an existing program that the schools have to do legally to monitor.
Right, but that's just
Yeah.
the end point. So I'm just saying, if we're thinking it's the piping, it seems like that piece of it is not in this study, but maybe that's not what I.
Yeah, I don't know the details of the
Yeah.
answer, but I'm pretty confident, Wendy, that the people in facilities with the district have been looking at this and thinking about it for at least the last 10 years. And at probably an increasing level. I mean, I just recall having a conversation with Rick Patton about it. probably 10 years ago.
This is sort of the end point, which is what's coming out of the tap, so what has been looked at. And now we're going upstream to figure out where the problem might exist.
And to figure out if it is addressable,
Yeah.
if it is addressable, so I mean, it's almost a foregone conclusion that there's lead coming, being introduced to the pipe somewhere, whether it's and I'm not suggesting that there is a lead collection line or connection line, but it could be a lead
There could
connection line, or certainly there are inlet solder joints throughout the facility, because that's the way everything was built for decades. So you try to map out where your problems might be that affect your drinking water, and maybe you can address it.
No, I mean, I understand the point of the study. I mean, having done this work myself, I'm
Yeah.
just saying, like, well, so, yeah, you remove the pipe, but you have to show that that was the problem or it's not the problem. So it just seems like a piece of it is missing, but maybe that's the second phase, I don't know.
I will say that if we ought to probably have, if we want to have that kind of discussion, we definitely ought to include Greg Haddon and Wayne, because
Yes.
they're much more knowledgeable on the technical side of this than I am.
Yeah. So they're basically just looking at replacing all the pipe. It seems to me like that's what's
Well,
being
Well,
proposed.
actually, I don't think that is the case, Wendy. I think part of what they're trying to do is they're trying to determine what the piping structure is. Both the sort of the piping diagram or the plumbing diagram, and understand what the components are. And they certainly won't be able to see every joint, but they're gonna know what the joints are. So, you define where is the problem, and maybe you can replace select lines and get good drinking water, get safe drinking water in specific places.
When the flood happened a few years ago, and it's, we're broke in the boys' bathroom, the looking in the walls was just was unbelievable. It was like going back in time, and there were pipes in there that people had, is this pipe even working? Or the Page School, in terms of what reading that report for what they did at the Bagnell versus no one had looked behind these walls in years, so we weren't even sure, is that pipe working or not working? You couldn't even tell. Yeah.
Yeah, if we don't have to decide tonight, if you and
Okay,
I'd like to
sure.
just read
Okay.
through it, so I understand what's being proposed. I mean, I don't think I have an issue with it, I just don't understand it.
Okay.
So, although this isn't necessarily part of this specific item, but it sort of ties in with the ARPA funds in general. So now there's no question that, say, we could apply those funds to, say, the guardrail over off of Farm Lane, or we could apply it to water infrastructure. I mean, there are places that we've talked about as possibilities, but wondered, but now it seems clear that we could use the funds for those purposes.
So I guess we need a prioritized list.
Right.
Yeah.
And then at some point it comes down to bandwidth, DPW and let's say DPW bandwidth.
And Angus, in terms of the nuts and bolts of doing it, is it less work to, say, have 3 big projects than 18 smaller projects?
Definitely.
So is there grant reporting and
The reporting
Yeah.
like a
aspects? Okay.
typical?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's pretty intensive.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, Stephanie, do you want to add anything on like what we can expect on like the reporting requirements on this? So I know you've been to a
Yeah,
number of
so-
workshops.
Sure. So the reporting is very extensive because it is federal funding. What will happen is for each project that is approved, we will have to do extensive reporting on all of the expenditures. I'll have to report up. And as well as all the documentation, any contracts that we enter. It's pretty extensive, just like the CARES Act reporting that we recently completed.
So fewer large dollar projects is definitely favorable to many small dollar projects. Okay,
Absolutely, yeah.
thanks. Great. Okay, so we'll table the second part of that and bring that back at the July 11th meeting. And I can forward some of the correspondence that went on back in like January because it all kind of started with a SWIG grant and then.
Yeah, I think you did put that in that was in the
Oh.
main packet, right?
It's just some. I mean, there
Yeah.
was a lot with like Greg Hadden and with, there was a lot of kind of
Okay.
correspondence at that time that led to the decision to not pursue the SWIG grant
Mhm.
and to instead solicit a proposal to have a better understanding of the pipes, because we kind of acknowledged that we don't know.
Yeah, I think it looks like the SWIG grant, it's only the point of use
Correct.
devices that are
Yeah.
eligible.
Yeah, so that seemed like a cart before the horse.
Yeah.
Great. So next, you guys had already, we're on to item K here. You had already directed that a letter be sent to DOT, and Jim put together a draft. I tweaked a little bit, so that's what's in front of you, and we wanted to just, of the packet, 100.
100?
Yep. So we just want to make sure the form of the letter reflects what you want to communicate, or if you want to tweak that in any way before sending it.
So I did a little digging over the weekend. So because we just talked about trucks. Well, there's trucks and trucks and trucks. And so I wanted to know, what are we trying to eliminate versus maybe things that we don't want to eliminate? And what is the height of a school bus versus what is the height of an 18-wheeler and all that thing. So I checked it out. So the bridge, as it's presently constructed, the maximum height is 12 feet 6 inches. So a school bus on average, and nothing is average, but you have to look somewhere. So most school buses are 10 feet 6 inches, and then they usually have an escape hatch of 4 inches. So the school bus comes out about 11, and the bridge is 12.6. So we wouldn't, by saying we can't have certain trucks, we would not be affecting a school bus, for example. What about trucks? So a typical flatbed or an 18-wheeler, for example, is 13 feet 6 inches. That's a regular 18-wheeler. So they can't do it. And I was trying to get the information on what a shipping container, which is what hit it this time. And those are the container is usually most shipping containers are 8 feet 6 inches, but the flatbed is usually that's also comes out to about 13.5 feet. Also, the flatbed is usually 5 feet. So obviously that would make a difference on how inflated the tires were, or how heavy the container was, or maybe the bend in the trailer. But so those kind of vehicles will you know, they can't go. But, there had been, unfortunately, other instances where, because I was reading some historical things about the bridge, just regular box trucks. Fortunately, they're aluminum, and so if they hit the crossbar, the truck's gonna lose that battle. Versus with the shipping container, it's really strong, but the aluminum top truck, a box truck, could be higher than the 12 feet 6 inches, but at least it's not gonna wreck the bridge. So I just wanted to get the information that we weren't putting ourselves, you know, we're writing to DOT and we're putting ourselves into a corner that we can't get something across the bridge that we actually might want to get across the bridge, like a fire truck or something like that. So,
Yeah, I mean.
that's the information I've got.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that a complete truck ban is the way to do it.
I know, but that's what the Haverhill,
Yeah,
they just said no trucks, and that's just too,
yeah.
Kind of
it's too
subjective.
all encompassing, yeah.
Because, you know, there are examples, like one of the times the bridge was struck by an overheight vehicle, if I remember correctly, they were carrying a trash haul off. And
That's right, yes.
And the driver claimed, I think I recall reading this in the newspaper article. The driver claimed that he had passed through that bridge, you know, under that structure multiple times before with the same equipment and hadn't hit it. You know, how do you prove that? I don't know, but you know, it could be that in some cases you're just variations in the way, you know, tire pressure, or, you know, is the container, you know, loaded with 10 tons of stuff or not? And if it has 10 tons of stuff, maybe it rides 2 inches lower, and if it doesn't have that 10 tons, maybe it rides at a little bit higher. So I mean, it strikes me that as important as a limitation on height of the vehicle is a warning system, you know, which you included in there. But I mean, that to me seems as important as anything else.
Well, I mean, I agree,
Yeah, because, you know, multiple times people have gone underneath there with the truck, whether or not they had reason to believe it wasn't high, it wasn't over height. It was, and nothing picked up on it.
See, we're in everything now is, we've got great sensors for things. We could have the old fashioned little tinsel hanging down, whatever. But why can't we have something electronic that, okay, you're at 13 feet. It actually sets off a noise alarm that don't go here.
But what if they don't hear it?
Maybe flashing lights.
Well, okay, so lights in, I don't know, but
How about
I'm
a
just,
permanent bar? 12, 16?
Well, yeah, then it becomes a hazard.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, you want to avoid creating a hazard in the process.
we don't want the truck to crash, yeah.
So in this, it says, should designate a permanent truck restriction. So is that meant to restrict trucks from the bridge, or is that meant to have the height restriction, which it already has?
Yeah, so it'd be, you restrict to vehicles under 12 feet 6 inches in that second paragraph.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that exists now, right?
It does.
Okay, all right, I just want to make sure I
The
understood.
sign is there,
Yeah.
but obviously the
also-
sign is inadequate.
It's
yeah.
also at the second arch. It's not at the first.
Yeah.
Which according to, I mean, I showed you the police report.
Yeah.
It says he swerved, like the state trooper said it seemed that the driver swerved to try to miss the sign, realizing that his truck was like too tall for that part of the bridge. So it maybe an earlier warning, maybe change at that first one saying, if you hit this, then don't go to the second one. Something like that.
Mhm.
Have you talked to them about this?
No.
So
You know,
I just,
You know, that they're working traffic with DOT.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, if I was gonna write a letter, I'd actually ask them to help me craft it.
Mhm.
Because they're gonna be more aware of all the things you're raising. They'll be familiar with everything you're trying to say. They may already have in their mind what they would love you to say.
Mhm.
Because sometimes they run into that. They're not, they work with DOT, but they're not always agreeing with DOT.
That's great. Yeah, we could send it over to Tony Komornick
Yeah,
and just have him advise us on what they think
Yeah,
makes sense.
what is it that's practical?
Yeah, that's a great suggestion.
okay,
And then maybe something state of the art for chocolate dots.
I think it's intriguing that you get under the first one without the second one. There's your.
That's the.
That's
Well,
the-
yeah, but the issue is the sign, the sign is just off center. You know, the sign is over the lane, over the travel lane.
It's not where it should be.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was over the travel lane.
It's like, how do we tell this guy not to go into here? Well, why don't we tell him all the way back there?
well, I don't know if you've noticed on the highways, they have these things that says high tension wires, and the sign is like 11 inches from, well, it's, I guess when the person's being electrocuted, at least they knew what hit them. So they knew the sign, yeah.
Oh,
Because it's way,
Now I get it.
when you're going 70 miles an hour, oh, that's what I just hit. And it's kind of ridiculous.
So the thing about the, where the sign was located, you know, versus what span was actually hit, that, I don't think that's accurate. I mean, I went down there, I was down there that day that it got hit. And there's a sign on the first crossbar, says 12 feet 6 inches, and it was about, you know, there's 2 lanes, and it was about 2/3 of the way across the first lane. I mean, it's probably one of the pictures, you know, it was probably 2/3 or so of the way across the lane that the truck should have been traveling in. Now, I didn't notice tracks going around it, but I wasn't there, you know, I mean, I didn't look with that in mind. And then the cross piece that it actually hit was another 150 feet farther up the bridge. So there was.
So the ones there.
There was plenty of room.
That's an example of how Tony can help you.
Yeah.
Because he'll be very intimately, he'll know as much as you guys.
Yeah, he'll know more.
Yeah, he'll know more. I didn't want to say that, but.
That's okay.
Good. Okay, so we'll run this through on VPC. That is a great suggestion, Rob, and bring it back to probably the next meeting.
So did Hazel send their letter already? Yeah.
Well, the Havel City Council sent the letter to the mayor
Oh,
and CC'd us, the delegation.
mhm.
That's it.
Okay.
And they said to the mayor, you should do this thing. I don't know if the mayor did it.
Okay.
Right.
So I had at the Memorial Day ceremony, Lenny Miller was there, and we talked a little bit afterwards, and you know, he had a conversation with somebody, I think at Mass DOT, and was told that, you know, state law doesn't allow them to do that. You know, and I don't recall exactly why, to close a bridge to truck traffic.
Well, part of it is, it would, I think I even overheard him.
Yeah.
That we would be forcing more truck traffic onto residential, other residential streets, and it's a big, it's a big.
So which is it?
inconvenience
Is it
to
a
the
state
driver.
requirement?
Boy, this is a big inconvenience to about
Oh,
50,000
I'm
people.
not, I'm just saying what DOT said.
Yeah. So having dealt with DOT specifically on this bridge, when I was on the commission, they can talk out of both sides of their mouth. To be blunt.
Yeah.
They have a mission to accomplish. And
Facilitate transportation. basically.
Facilitate transportation. Oh, by the way, we're gonna stick with this historic bridge that has deficiencies, but we don't, it's historic, so we're gonna stay with it. Oh, by the way, once we fix it, we didn't tell you this, we're gonna raise the weight limit, whether by state statute or not, because they have lowered it, so they can lower it. I would be, anybody from DOT who tells me the state requires that you can't close into trucks, I would want to see the legislation first.
In fact, I think the reason why they went to that lightweight decking material was so that they could raise the weight limit.
No, that's not why. We went to that, they didn't want to do that.
Oh, really? Okay.
They proposed a heavier deck. And we said that we wanted a lighter deck. So they came to us and they said, so good news, you're in the Fast Act program, great, wonderful. But we're only gonna spend this amount of money. Oh, why? Well, we don't want to use the lightweight. We said, well, thanks for getting this in the fast track, we want the lightweight. And then I went up to the engineer afterwards, and I said, so am I right in that? And he said, oh yeah, you want the lightweight. He was contradicting his boss, and they gave us the lightweight. We did that so that the turning mechanism theoretically should allow for a pedestrian bridge.
Yeah.
That's why we did the light deck. I don't know if we'll ever get there, that would be like, I mean, that would be glorious, but the whole idea was.
They cantilevered something out off the side. so-
Exactly, right. So the deck, the light deck is the thing that allows us
Okay.
Okay.
theoretically hang a pedestrian bridge off there, because that was always our biggest dream. It'll never come true, but that's how that is.
Oh, it's great taking your life in your hands trying to ride a bike.
I know.
Or as my wife and Margaret used to do, was walk to the middle of a bridge.
Right.
Why are you for that? Whatever, so that's the story there. But I think DOT can end up being convinced to do the right thing, it's just by dragging them sometimes kicking and screaming. This isn't being recorded.
Yeah, it's actually being broadcast.
Broadcast, right?
Right to DOT.
The server notices that you said the word DOT, so.
Yeah, the owl.
Except I can't figure out how to stop a truck from driving into
It's in the OWL software.
Okay, we got 10 minutes to go through the wage schedule.
All right, so there's two items before you. One is the broad establishing the grades and ranges for each grade position. Obviously, this is something that's actively under review with the Collins Center study, and in all expectation is going to be totally replaced within fiscal 23.
Okay.
So it's put for you because it's something that is done every year under the salary compensation bylaw. It calls for basically the board to approve the wage ranges. So I did adjust for the grade 2. I set the minimum to the minimum wage as it will be on January 1st. I did go back through in the formulas in the old one. I remember at the last meeting, I said maybe there was an error. There wasn't. I don't know what the methodology is. I have a single Excel workbook with probably 9 or 10. It goes back, I think, to FY12. So I don't know who did it, who created it first, but it's just been carried forward every year. So, but I did just keep punch in 15 as the low end of the grade 2.
And then that will increase next year when.
Yeah, I mean, next year we're gonna have something totally different is my guess. And my guess is we'll have more like grades and steps like other organizations, but for now, this is what we've got. So this is one item before you is the kind of broad ranges. And then the other is the specific salary wage compensation for FY23. And over the years, we've tweaked the formatting a little bit. This has been pretty consistent, what you see here over the last couple of years, which I think is a lot. There's a huge amount of information here, but it's a lot cleaner than what it was back in FY18, FY19. And so I went through and proofed this kind of line by line against the approved wage budgeting for FY23. So
Jenny did an enormous amount of work, and so I was able to get this all done in about 3 hours. I think it probably would have taken me 12 hours or more if I hadn't had her help, so thank her for that. There are, as always, a couple of nuances in there, with regard to, the shared position of Merrimack or the particular rules governing wage rate for full-time employees who are also called firefighters. There's always some complexity in there, but.
So any percent change higher than 2%, is that a merit-based or?
There's nothing other than 2%, other than in some of the union contracts. There were, for instance, a couple of whether educational incentives, for instance, with police that didn't apply in FY22, but do apply in FY23.
I don't remember the conservation.
So conservation, that was their COLA townwide is 3%.
Okay.
So it really was to minimize administrative complexity, because if you're paying the same employee different rates, it gets incredibly complicated.
So I move that are we accepting?
Yep.
Accept the salary and wage calculations for FY 2023.
Discussion. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Okay, and I don't know if you intended to also include in your vote the wage ranges, but
I
that is
did. Yeah.
that was, okay, so that's, we'll consider that
Should I
too.
revise the motion?
No, I think as long as your intent was clear, that's fine. All right, now, let's see, we have, the holiday recognition dates. I did not get a chance to talk to Corinne today. I meant to try to do that and I totally forgot.
Wanted to mention that they were open on Saturdays in the summer.
And that's another thing that, like last year, I think they
were
weren't, and
not,
then now they're, yeah, so, so we can adjust that to normal day closed would be just Sunday in the summer.
Mhm.
There's something the town didn't used to do, but I started doing this my first year just because it's such a convenience for employees to know ahead of time when's the holiday going to be recognized. Often it's very simple, but occasionally it's not. Is it a Friday? Is it a Monday? Whatever. So I think it's just nice to, as a courtesy, really to just get it done for the whole year. So again, I want to thank Jenny. She did this working on a format I'd put together in my last job, and it's just enormously helpful to when these things just kind of appear in my inbox rather than
Oh, look at that.
before it was even on my to-do list. It was in my inbox.
So as far as the day after Thanksgiving is concerned, at the moment, I don't think we do anything other than what's shown.
I mean, one thing you might do is just remove that from this altogether. It's not a recognized holiday. You could just strike it entirely and then make a decision closer to whether you're going to close. It's historically, there's a relative handful of employees who work on Friday. Most employees' regular schedules, at least here in the town office, don't even include Friday. But I included it when I first did this a couple of years ago because I was trying to be complete. But this did come up in conversation with Jenny last week where she said,
You're changing your tune, Angus. You never wanted us to do that before.
to do what?
You wanted it defined. You didn't like us doing it at the last minute.
I do. I think it's a courtesy to employees because even if they are like 90% that's Friday, they're not gonna have to work. I think it's a courtesy to people to tell them ahead of time, like, you know, we're closed Friday. That way, if they're traveling for the weekend or whatever, they don't need to worry about it instead of like a week or two prior voting it. So I do prefer, I guess the point is whether you include it on this, because it's not, I mean, we did change the heading to holiday and closure. But there would be a reason, I think, to limit this just to the defined 12 holidays and the personnel policy.
Oh, so you mean closed, but it's not a paid?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, but that's been debated. That's been debated. It shouldn't, under a strict reading of policy, it shouldn't. Well,
I think if we close.
yeah, if the employer closes, the employee is prepared to come to work, but can't because the employer closed. I consider that like a snow day.
Yeah, it's not a holiday.
Where like they should get paid because they were ready to come to work and couldn't because of the employer. But it does create, you know, it's kind of like effectively a holiday, but it's not really. And
yeah,
could always do what April does.
What does April do?
They give everyone 3 personal days that you can only use one of those personal days for that Friday after Thanksgiving.
Not a bad idea. Yeah, it's kind of
the way they do it.
It's like pretty heavy-handed.
It's pretty heavy-handed, except that it's not, because you're increasing, you're formally increasing time off, paid time off. So I don't know if I call that.
But Havel has a lot more full-time employees.
Yeah.
So Fridays after Thanksgiving, technically people would show up because they want to get paid what their hourly rate.
Yeah.
I'll tell you my thinking on it. See, I think it sounds ridiculous, but there might be some kind of situation where we need people to be there on the day after Thanksgiving. I don't know what that is, but that, you know, we've had pandemics and all sorts of problems before, and this hasn't occurred, but it just seems like doing it way ahead of time. There might be some reason why we don't, I don't know what that is, but there might be a reason why we don't want to do it on a particular year. That's sort of my weird way of not wanting to do it ahead of time.
Think of a situation if I had to do an election coming up in December or something.
Well, right. I think of like setting the tax rate. I mean, let's say we're like way up against it with deadline to set the tax rate, and it's got to be voted the Monday after Thanksgiving. And as of Wednesday midday, we're just not there yet. And me and the accountant and the assessor and the key core people have a lot more work to do. And I'm like, I need your help. And they're like, no, it says right here on this piece of paper, I'm not working Fridays. No, I wouldn't have any objection to striking that, or just table this to the next meeting and we can shoot.
No, we gotta decide.
Yeah.
No point in it. I'll go along with anything.
You go along with what?
Personal days it is.
I thought you said anything. I was like, I was trying to come up.
That's what I said. He said, what did he
I
say?
heard anything. Yeah, what
That's
did you say?
What did you say?
I said I'll go along with anything.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
I guess I'm comfortable with the way it's been done in the past, which is, 2 to 3 weeks or so before, just announcing that it'll be, that things will be closed and go forward. So they're now with Juneteenth, there are 13?
12.
12, okay, so it's now 12, okay. Paid holidays increased by, 9% this year. So I don't mean to be stingy, but, there was already a 9% increase this year.
So, all right, so I'm hearing maybe a suggestion to strike the Friday after Thanksgiving from this. And that would strike that lengthy footnote as well.
Yeah, and, hope is not lost. There is precedent.
there might actually just, Angus, I don't know how it affects having it on here. Does it formalize it in such a fashion that union contracts always say we're gonna have exactly
Yeah,
the other.
that's a good point.
And they could argue that this is a holiday in everything except name, the way it's here.
Yeah. All right, so with that revision of striking that column and the corresponding footnote, is there a motion?
Yeah, I move to accept it as you just described.
Second.
With the change in the library also.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I made it, I changed that too.
Okay.
Excellent.
Great,
All those
thank
in
you.
favor? Aye.
Bye.
Thank you very much. It was meeting minutes.
The only thing I noted, I was not present for that first set of meeting minutes. Let me get back to that. But the principal page school, there were two different misspellings.
Yeah, I see one of them, yeah.
Yeah, there was one in the list of attendees and then a different misspelling in a couple, 2 or so appearances.
What page is that?
Yeah, I see it,
I
yeah.
think it's P-U-T-E-R-I.
It is, that is correct, yeah.
P-U-T-E-R-Y.
Aye,
Aye.
yeah, I see that, great. Yeah, we can do a find and replace and correct that.
What pages were those on? So on 105 and 106. Thank you. Rebecca, we get on these tomorrow morning.
So page 111, it's the second meeting. Do you want to vote on it individually or we do both?
Yeah, I guess we probably do them individually, but so I move, well, I can't, because I need to abstain from that, because I wasn't present.
I lost track of what the date was.
23rd.
May
All right,
23rd.
so I move to accept the minutes of May 23rd as amended.
Second. All those in favor? Aye.
No, I abstain.
All right, on page 111, Jim, item J, it's just a typo. What, it's just missing the H.
It's just W-A-T.
Yeah.
Page 111. Wow.
J, item J.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we're really having to work to find problems.
I was gonna say, you guys are really nitpicking now.
Oh, they're so great, it's easy to see them.
She's doing really great.
Rat. Rat the best course.
I move to accept the minutes as amended.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Okay, next item is just informational, notice of intent on the spillway, and I included one of the consultant's letters. I didn't include the preceding letter because I think that had been circulated as part of a prior packet. So this is just to keep you kind of apprised of this project. I know that Michelle is in touch with her counterpart in Newburyport with the intent of trying to coordinate the permitting. Potentially even to hold like a joint hearing. I don't know if they would.
Their whole commission came to the.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay, well then, yeah, so you know stuff I know, so go ahead with,
Oh, but that was it. They were just out there to
All she does.
listen. They talked about doing a joint sidewalk, but then decided that that wouldn't work. So our Concom is meeting, I think, this Sunday.
great.
Yeah, they don't have a formal meeting. They're doing a site.
No. it's just a
Yeah, yeah.
sidewalk, yeah.
I will say, as I think I'd circulated initially, 3 or 4 weeks ago, that our water superintendent, Mike Goutet, had raised some concerns. We did have an on-site meeting, very positive. I think he and Bob Janes came away from that feeling very comfortable. I don't want to speak for them, but it seemed like it was a very positive meeting. We were there for probably over an hour with John Eric White from and Tom Cusick from Newburyport, and myself and Michelle, Mike Goutet, Bob Janes, Wayne was there. Actually, was Wayne there? No, I think he was dealing with a crisis at Page School, but very good meeting, and all of Mike's questions were resolved.
Yeah, I was there as well as Monday, and they, John Eric White had an interesting observation about our water department's concern, which was that because of the side of the earthen dam that we're currently on, that if the river floods to be that high, the well field will already be exposed anyway.
Which way? From the Merrimack, you mean?
No,
Flood that way, or-
no, if I recall correctly, the earthen dam, Wendy, correct me if I'm wrong, but the earthen dam actually separates, because it wraps way around, and it's why it actually, actually that's another whole story, but it wraps probably halfway up the length of the reservoir on the eastern or on the western side, and our well field is on the outside of that.
Okay,
So if the Merrimack came up that high, then it would be, the water would get there anyway, without, regardless of what was done on the spillway.
oh, okay. It would get there first, in other words.
Yeah, well, if,
It's on the other side of the spillway, is what you're saying.
yeah, let me show you on my map, and it'll make sense. I think I can show that.
It seemed like they also addressed the concerns about that Elisa Grammer had raised about the Quaker Cemetery and the rise.
Mhm.
Yeah, this doesn't show contours. But anyway, I usually don't need to spend a lot of time on it, but, yeah, I'm not gonna find that now.
Yeah, he did talk when we were in the field about how the dam is and an alternative configuration, which as I recall, John Eric was basically describing would either put West Newbury in the same boat as Newburyport or having a different interest in, depending on how, whether the spillway was raised or not, would either kind of flood our well field or not, depending on how the dam is configured. And he did like a quick sketch of like the way how it is now and how it could be different. So it seemed like a constructive dialogue, between the two water departments. So hopefully we'll see more of that, because it was evident just in the conversation that there was an exchange of ideas that, at least in the 4 years I've been here, I hadn't seen before. And it was very positive and it was very collegial. And I think there's a lot of good that can come from that between the two towns, especially on the reservoir and the this kind of issue, shared interests. Next item is just informational. I signed a contract recently with Horsley Witten Group. This is something that had been intended to, we hope to get this started a lot sooner, but just a bandwidth issue. It took a while before we could kind of get it fully scoped. We've gone through a couple of go-arounds with different prospective vendors and just kept getting to where we as a stormwater working group didn't feel we would get what we needed. And so we continued to refine scope and then invited a proposal from Horsley Witten Group, who we've had really good working relationship with over the last several years. So they are under contract to basically help us take all of the regs, including the stormwater, and do reviews for internal consistency and efficiency of administration, both for staff and for applicants. We want to, at the end of this, be able to give applicants clear guidance of what is the process they need to follow, who do they need to go to, in what order. So one of the work products you see is kind of like a workflow, kind of flow chart, which I'm sure you've seen in other communities. We don't have that. And I think with some of the complexity in our zoning, some of the complexity in some of our other regs, and then overlaying that with a new stormwater bylaw and a 30-page set of stormwater regs has created a situation where those staff who are kind of on the front lines, the town planner, the building inspector, conservation agent, don't feel that they can give really clear advice to applicants because so much of this is new. And prior to this work, no one's done like a thorough review for internal consistency. And for instance, if we're regulating stormwater in one place but there's still vestiges of regulation elsewhere, like in subdivision regs, there really ought to be like cross references, so we're being consistent. That's really the work product that we're looking for, is to get to how do we make sure our overall kind of regulatory scheme is cohesive and internally consistent and can be administered as efficiently as possible without compromising any performance standards, but just to make it like clear. So this, we all felt really, at a staff level, we felt really good about getting this under contract, because it took several months and several kind of side trips before we got to something that we were comfortable would actually do what we wanted it to do.
So how would this work if edits to the regulations are proposed? Would have to go back to the planning board?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And so that's one of the things that we were really just adamant about was, we wanted redlined edits of our regs. One of the prospective vendors, like, they kept saying, oh, they're going to give us sample bylaws. We don't need sample bylaws. We need someone to dig into the details and tell us what our, so that's, everything would still need to go through an approval process, whether that's a town meeting for a bylaw or whether that's a planning board, for regulations. That's part of why we set up a pretty compact schedule with all the work set to be done right around Labor Day, so that we have then our marching orders if there's things that we want to bring to a town meeting or bring through a planning board process, ideally prior to next construction season next year. The next item I put in was, there was a transmittal email that I guess I had forgotten to save to the server, so it didn't get into the packet, and it's not totally material, but I just want to, I had asked Wayne to put together a project list, just because I know in our working state, he's got a lot going on, and that the time to manage all these projects is, cumulative is quite significant. So I just want to, from his transmittal email, which I really appreciate, because it's just great to have this snapshot.
I think you emailed that to us.
Oh, okay.
I read
Yeah.
it, but I can't find it now.
Well, just where he said that basically he estimates that about 35 hours a week in his schedule is accounted for with the daily operations of the department. that's not listed in the project status list. So that leaves an estimated 5 hours to complete special project tasks. And the reason why extra hours beyond 40 is required in most weeks to succeed at his position. So that's the thing to keep in mind when you look at this list, just like I've said in some of my projects, like the major projects are kind of what you do in a few minutes here and there because your day to day is just so busy. So I just really want to commend Wayne for the work he's doing and the team he's built and that he's building. His support staff is doing more and more and more. And now with this new position posted and a couple of applicants already.
You have a couple already, great.
Yeah. So I haven't reviewed them qualitatively, but we have gotten.
What was it posted?
It was posted, I want to say like the Wednesday or Thursday, 2 weeks ago, the week before last. So.
We're going up against Salisbury too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they posted a very similar
Oh,
position,
is that right?
just ahead of us.
Same pay, but it's a union position.
Hmm.
So
That cuts both ways.
it does.
Yeah.
Let's see. Planning conservation. So just informational, we did make an internal hire of Caitlin Bradstreet, who's been supporting the DPW for a while as the admin, has been hired as the planning support position. So that just started, I want to say maybe last Monday or 2 Mondays ago. And that's off to a really good start. Leah is so happy to have some support. So I just want to make you aware of that. With regard to Concom, we had teed up kind of a request to get funding to see about some admin support for that office. Concom met last week. Wendy was there. And, you know, the timing wasn't right, in large part due to the amount of time and effort the agent is expending toward the invasive species interns and the amount of oversight that she's doing there. The idea of adding a support position at this moment was seen as more of a burden than a benefit. So I do think which is, you know, as we all know, it does take time to manage staff, especially where it's a new, you know, like defining what can be delegated versus what she's got to do herself. So I do think we want to revisit that in the fall. And I think that she and I did meet, and I do think that's going to help. It just wasn't the right time. So I don't know, Wendy, if you wanted to elaborate from.
No, that was it. She, you know, they did say in the fall, it might be worth revisiting.
Okay.
So Wendy, that was discussed at, I left right after.
Yeah, that was the last thing.
For Wendy was there for 3 hours to get it. I felt so terrible.
Oh, wow.
I really did.
That was a stimulating meeting.
So we did have a couple of items we'd hope to get on tonight's agenda that just, you know, didn't come together. So those will be, we haven't forgotten those things like the Town Manager Act. And I think there were a couple of other things I had on an earlier punch list that just weren't ready for prime time.
So one thing I had is I met with the planning board to ask about setting up a working group for the soldiers and sailors zoning stuff, and Ray Cook is going to do it. I didn't know if I should go ahead and set up a meeting with him, or whether you want it to be like the whole group with you and Leah and.
Yeah, I think we should meet, at least the 4 of us. I think Sam would be great to have, and he's very happy to be part of it. If he couldn't make it, it's not a problem. But I think Leah and I think the 4 of us should find the time.
Okay.
When I talked to Leah about it about 2 weeks ago, I did tell her that I didn't envision that initial meeting happening until July, just because I knew kind of what was on my calendar between then and the end of June.
Mhm.
So I told her at that point, like, we do want to do something, but it wasn't like a next week thing. Of course, now next week is July, so that would be fine. And it may end up being like one meeting, and we may all be of one mind. I just think it will be helpful to have, you know, that discussion, and then decide how we want to proceed.
All right, so you set that up then.
Yeah, I know Leah's out. She was out today and tomorrow. I forget if she's back Wednesday, or I think she's back Wednesday. She's taking a couple of vacation days. So we'll check in and get something on the calendar for first week or 10 days of July.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Good.
Great.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. There's hesitation.
Just waiting for all those in favor.
10:23.
All right, good night, everyone. Thanks.